Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Hoopsville on this 15th of January, 2024. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Welcome into the Hoopsville studios. If you got questions for us, you can always tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can email us, hoopsville at D3sports.com. Actually, all of our social medias are at D3Hoopsville, except for Facebook, which is facebook.com/Hoopsville. Join us there, chat with us, interact with us, whatever it is. We would love to have you on another busy D3 week for everything. I hope you have enjoyed it, because one of the things I brought up as the name of the show was routine surprises. It is getting routine in terms of surprises in Division III. It feels like it happens all the time. And with the latest top 25, certainly a little bit of upheaval in the men's side. Women's not out yet. As soon as we get it, we will talk about it. But on the men's side, I know on my ballot, when I was looking at it, almost all my teams lost. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 teams actually didn't lose. I apologize. It just felt more like that. I had 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16 total losses in my top 25. So I made some drastic changes near the bottom, or in the middle on the way down, I should say. And we'll talk all about that more coming up later in the program when Bob Quillman and Ryan Scott appear on the show to talk about the top 25, and they'll have their debatable, dubious, and deep dive teams to discuss. My top 3 did not change. Technically, my top 4 didn't change, but I swapped a Trinity for a Trinity in my top 4. My biggest drops may have been Tufts, NYU, and Dubuque. They fell from 11, 12, and 14 out of my poll. Tufts lost 2 straight to Amherst and Hamilton. They have lost 3 out of 4 to fall to 13 and 4. I still think they're a darn good team, but maybe not a top 25 team right now. NYU, gosh, it feels like deja vu. I know they played a tough Case and Carnegie team, but they went 0-2. They've now lost 3 straight. Not 3 straight in conference. I apologize. They have not done that. But I removed them from the poll temporarily. I'm happy to bring them back in. There's just so many teams to keep in your top 25. And Dubuque I removed because they went 0-2, including against Coe, who went 1-1 on the week, losing to Nebraska Wesleyan. So I kept Coe in, but removed Dubuque. And I also removed Elmhurst, who went 0-2 this week and has now lost 3 of 5. Maybe a little rough in those gut instincts, sure. But again, there are so many teams in the top 25, or teams in general, who deserve some top 25 attention, that I just felt like I needed to be drastic with teams that just didn't have good weeks. Or multiple weeks. Forgive the barking dog in the background if you happen to hear him. But I left my top 3 alone. As I said, Hampton City, Case Western Reserve, John Carroll are my top 3. But we'll talk more about that with Bob and Ryan later in the program. Got an interesting collection of teams on the show tonight. We'll talk to Notre Dame, Maryland women's basketball. Talk about their leadership of the now merged and larger United East Conference and those changes. We'll talk to their head coach about all that. Bowdoin women basketball will be on the show. They're on top the NESCAC right now. And we'll have a great conversation with Megan Phillips, who we talked to earlier today. Then we'll head out to the West Coast, talk Cal Lu men's basketball. If you're not paying attention to the SCIAC, you should be. Cal Lu men's basketball will be on the program. And Russell White will discuss his squad and a very tough SCIAC. And then we'll head to Tennessee, talk Maryville men's basketball with Raul Placeres, the head coach of the Fighting Scots. That's all ahead of Bob and Ryan here on the show. Lots. By the way, NCAA convention finished. The 4 pieces of legislation, I believe it was 4, passed. Surprisingly, stunt passed. And in a bigger margin than I expected, including the fact that, while stunt was passing as an emerging sport, it's not a championship yet, just an emerging sport. One other school added acrobatics and I can't remember the full name of that sport, but they added acrobatics. there's a split between schools who want to do either acrobatics or stunt. They are similar yet different. And so I was a little surprised at stunt. Division III was the only one hadn't passed it as an emerging sport, but it is now passed. The adoption of the new language that is Division III and its amendments passed as well. Got word today that they may have been a little closer than it was intended or thought it would be, and that it may not have passed. At least there were some who thought it wasn't going to pass at all. Apparently some want to remove the language that Division III is about a 4-year education, which I understand. There's a lot more student athletes now who go, or I should say students in general, who go 5 years to complete their degrees in a little bit of a slower pace. That is not saying they're trying to take advantage of anything or anything along those lines. It's just the dynamics in play. So I'm not surprised by that, but there was also thoughts of removing some of the scholarship language in Division III's title and motto and whatever you want to call it. Anyway, we'll dive more into that when we have Luis McCleary on the show in a week or two. We've initially had conversations with Luis about coming on as a state of D3. Usually it's on our marathon show, which I still have not set a date for. But we'll get Luis on the show, talk more about that, talk about the new financial impact that the ESPN deal is going to present. Interesting developments there. I think we talked about it on Thursday. If we didn't, I forgot to. The President's Council electing to put a pause on the raised dues for everybody. So it goes from $2,000-ish back down to $900. That removes $500,000 from the Division III budget, while the Division III budget is going to get, according to some who publicly spoke, is going to get about $4 million from the ESPN deal. I think it's going to be a little under $4 million if you do the math, but still, I know they want to spend off the reserves in Division III and try and help Division III institutions by reducing the dues. I don't think you really make that big an impact removing $1,100 from the dues. I don't think that's going to make or break athletic department budgets. But I also find it interesting you're removing $500,000 while you're getting a boost of $4 million. But I do know they want to spend down the reserve a little bit, so it just may be along those lines, and we'll keep an eye on that. But some interesting things out of the convention. Next year will be the far more interesting ones. Now we also watch, as we mentioned on previous show, the Championships Committee. They will meet in early February, see what they end up passing, whether the football will go to 40 and per diems will increase, where pairwise exists. I'm still hearing a lot of frustration about pairwise information that's not being released by those at the Championships Committee. I'm saying Championships Committee. Others just like to use the moniker NCAA, but it is people within Division III that are holding that back, and not releasing comparisons to committees' work in the most recent years to see if pairwise really does line up. And then you got to ask the question, who's going to pay the money? So you talk about an increase of $4 million in Division III. You talk about removing $500,000 from that budget. And now we got to pay for pairwise along with expanded championships and the like. Where's the money coming from? Who's going to have the money? Who's going to be allowed to spend money, etc. So it'll be fascinating to watch, in my opinion. Pairwise is not coming immediately. At the earliest, it would be 25-26 academic year. But we'll see what Championships Committee does early February, and then that will progress through the Special Projects and Financing Committee onto the Management Council and then onto President's Council, all by the end of April-ish. Fascinating to watch. We'll see how it all plays out. I'm not sure all the things the Championships Committee wants to do is going to really end up fitting the bill and selling. But what do I know? We could be wrong. Again, you can interact with us in lots of different ways, and I hope you will take advantage of that. We certainly love interacting with all of you and want to take advantage of those opportunities. Please feel free to do so. Let's talk about a couple of other significant things coming up. Obviously, new Top 25 this week. Thursday's show. So, again, if you're new to the show or you're not familiar, while in November and December is a little bit more of a free-for-all, we kind of pick out guests we find interesting and those we want to have on the show. Now we're into a part of the season where we're trying to make sure we're talking to as many guests, as many teams, as many conferences as possible. And so we kind of rotate things. I screwed up last week, did not even put 2 and 2 together, that I had 2 formerly Great Lakes, now Region 7 guests on Monday and then Thursday. That was an error on my part. I was wondering why Thursday I couldn't get the numbers to line up, and I couldn't figure out why I was missing a region, and I just didn't put it together, but I did now. So today we will be talking to a representative of Region 4, even though this will be 3 straight guests out of the Baltimore area, ironically enough. It's not 3 straight. I'm sorry. I think it's 3 out of 4, but still. So we'll talk to somebody out of Region 4. That's Notre Dame representing the UEC. Then we'll talk to Bowdoin, who represents Region 1-2. We merge 1 and 2. Yes, there's more schools there, but the conference numbers are about the same, and it just works out if Region 1 and 2 stay combined. Then Cal Lu represents Region 10, and Maryville represents Region 6. So that will leave... And 10, I'm sometimes merging with Region 9. This is where it gets a little bit hairy because we basically have to take 10 regions and squeeze them into 2 nights of 4 each. So we'll have to play with this a little bit. But then Thursday, we will talk to Regions 3 and 5, along with Region 7, and then Region 8 most likely. But 8, 9, and 10, I'm gonna have to fudge, I have a feeling, depending on how things are going and what's going on. Some things that jumped out, at least based on my top 25 of losses this past week. First off, and this is on the men's side, St. Thomas defeating Trinity of Texas was a bit of a surprise, not because St. Thomas isn't a good team and it's a conference game, and you probably should expect Trinity, Texas is not going to get through conference play unscathed. I just didn't see this one in particular coming, but I didn't knock Trinity, Texas too hard for that. Guilford losing to Randolph-Macon on the road. No surprise to me, though that was of note. It's first off, it's in Ashland, and so that's a long trip for Guilford. Second of all, Randolph-Macon's a darn good team. Let's not forget. Mount Union losing to John Carroll. It wasn't that they lost to John Carroll. It's how badly they lost to John Carroll. I thought about moving them further down, and maybe I should have. I'm looking at a couple of teams I now have Mount Union still ahead of, and in hindsight, probably should have shifted them down a few more spots. But I also chalked it up to, well, it's a conference foe, except that John Carroll beat Mount Union by the largest margin of victory in the series history, and the margin of victory was closer than the game really was. That really surprised me, Mount Union struggled as much as they did. Whitewater lost 2 this week, to Stevens Point and to Stout. They're now 12-3 overall. I was a bit surprised that after the Stevens Point game, Whitewater wasn't going to be a little bit more ready for Stout. We talked about Tufts and NYU losing, and I picked up on that. Dubuque surprised me by losing 2. Again, okay, you lost to 1, but you can't believe you lost to both. Elmer struggling right now has got me a little bit surprised. I know the conference is tough, but I can't believe they've lost 3 out of 5 and 2 straight this week. Pomona pitcher losing to Cal Lu. Well, that's part of the reason Cal Lu's on the show. Virginia Wesleyan losing to Bridgewater. Again, the ODAC is bonkers tough. Absolutely bonkers tough. And that's it out of my top 25. Certainly there were others. On the women's side of things, somewhat chalk, but also some surprises as well. Looking forward to getting more of that as we dive into it as the week progresses. With that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk Notre Dame Gators, the team out of Baltimore, which is now a co-ed school, is leading the UEC in women's basketball. We'll talk to their head coach coming up about all of it. You'll listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. So much more ahead on a jam-packed show. Thanks for tuning in and joining us. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Football has taught me a lot throughout my life. It's definitely had a huge imprint on who I am as a person. Competing at a Division III level created that opportunity for me to go to college. Not only was I the first one in my family to graduate college, but I was really the first one to even go. Being the first one, I'm breaking that cycle, and now that I've graduated, I'm not sure what's the next step, but I know I have a lot of doors open. And a lot of those are open because I played football and ran track here at Otterbein.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all.
It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
If I lose, I'll respond with respect.
If I win, I'll back it up with humility.
If I fail, I'll rise up with honor. It's tough for us to put it all on the line.
Don't undo my hard work with poor sportsmanship.
Respect. It's the name of the game.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization. Well, that ad rolled over. We're going to have to fix that. Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. If you've got questions for us, you can always find the information right on the bottom of your screen. Look us up on social media at D3Hoopsville, unless it's Facebook. Just forget the D3 part of that. Even YouTube's D3Hoopsville. You can also join us by email, hoopsville@d3sports.com. That's how you can interact with us on the show. Women's basketball is going to be where we start things off today. We'll start in Region 4, and interesting enough, we're still in the Baltimore and Maryland area. Region 4 likes to encompass a few different areas. And in that region is the ever larger now UEC, after the CSAC and UEC came together as a conference most recently. They've split each other in two. So if you look at the one side we're talking about, Notre Dame of Maryland continues to lead the way. 11-4 is the record, 8-0 in conference action. You go back to last year when the program was 23-5. Can't even tell you the last time we saw 20 wins from the Gators when they went through the CSAC, won it with a 16-1 conference record. What to expect from this year after the success of last year? Joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline to discuss it all, the head coach of the Gators. It is Kalin Wynn. Coach, first and foremost, thanks for joining me on the show. I know it's a bit of a wintry day out there, so maybe biding your time for all the lunatics to get off the road.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Listen, this is a program, as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of emerged in recent years. Right before the pandemic, we kind of saw a little bit of a sign of it. 17-9, 13-5 in the CSAC. After the pandemic, 14-10, 13-5, and then an explosion last year, 23-5, 16-1 in CSAC play. Now you're in this ever larger conference, which we'll talk about. But what's been the key for the Gators and Notre Dame to kind of emerge a little bit from basically a program that maybe not a lot of people were paying attention to?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the recruiting. Initially, Notre Dame was a school or a basketball program that pretty much took on whomever showed up to play. My coaches and I, we took it upon ourselves to really stick our foot in the mud and get into recruiting heavily, not just in this area, but outside the Baltimore area. We've got a lot of kids that are not from Maryland. We've got three kids from Florida, one from Mississippi, one from Georgia, one from South Korea by way of Alabama. That was the big turnaround for us, just getting the bodies and the basketball players in place instead of just people who showed up to be on the team.
Yeah, showed up on campus and was a warm body, essentially.
Exactly.
It's a storied school, interestingly enough, one that dates back, the campus does, to the beginnings of a prep school that my daughter now attends. My wife and her family all attended. The Notre Dame runs deep in the Maryland area. But it's a school that has a rich history, all women's school. So when you got going on all this, you were recruiting to an all-women's school. This is a first year. It's now co-ed. So there's even a few extra curveballs. How much was it tough to, or maybe easy to recruit saying it's an all-women's school, and now how much has changed now that it's a co-ed school?
Well, before we went co-ed, it was definitely a challenge to recruit to an all-women's school. You would recruit kids, and then once you told them that we were all women or all female school, a lot of them said, no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. Some who appreciated that. But I think the only real challenge we've had is because we had the one court so far, is just working with the men's team and trying to coordinate training and practice times. And so the men's coach, TJ Jordan, and I, we really worked well together doing that. So there hasn't been an issue so far with that. So far, so good.
We should point out, too, you have maybe a couple other advantages in play. First off, being a Brooklyn, New York native, you actually came down here to go to the famed Morgan State University. Mm-hmm. Kind of like me, came to Goucher College and maybe just didn't get out after that. We didn't find a way out of the Baltimore Metroplex. But as a result, you picked up AAU coaching, a lot of success getting players onto the college level from there. You also have two daughters who did incredibly well as basketball players. And anybody doesn't recognize the last name, your daughter Anastasia played for Johns Hopkins. Maya played for St. Francis University. You've had a lot of kind of the bedrock maybe is a little bit thicker and bigger than most coaches coming into this job, and you have experience and understanding and kind of know all the dynamics in play to really make this work.
Yeah, I think so. I think coaching, starting out in the AAU circuit, definitely helped a lot. Get to know a lot of people, a lot of program directors, a lot of coaches. So you know who to talk to. And once they found out that I was at Notre Dame, I constantly get a lot of phone calls about, kids that they want me to take a look at. Initially recruiting, when I first took over the job, recruiting in the Baltimore area wasn't that easy, mainly because of the reputation that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely.
So that's why we had to go outside the area. And now the reputation is starting to precede us. The culture is starting to precede us. And so it's made recruiting a lot easier.
It helps that you're successful. And what I find interesting about this team, not only we'll talk about the conference again, the changes there, you have a rather young team. So you build off that success last year at 23-5. You turn around, you've got one senior, you've got a handful of juniors, and you got a whole mess of freshmen. And it's those underclassmen who are actually leading the way right now. Amani Watts at 19-plus points a game. Hillary Howard at 13-plus points a game. The one upperclassman, a junior, Amaya Durham at 9.3. Then it's back to a freshman in Niaja Fertrell. That's what I find the most fascinating about this team. Why I wanted you on is not only did you have all that success last year with a great senior group and all of that talent, but you're now doing it with a bunch who weren't here last year.
That's been a huge challenge. It's funny because one of my assistant coaches, we were talking about this, and we were saying how young we are, and they don't understand the impact that they've put on the area and the program and the team so far. We lost four starters from last year's team that went 23-5, 2 seniors and 2 transfers that moved up to D2 programs. So we knew going in that we were going to have to replace a lot of important players. So once again, we got in there, we put the pedal to the metal and try to recruit and out-recruit everybody. My philosophy as a coach is that I don't care how good a coach you are, if you don't have the talent, you can't win. So our goal every year is to bring in the talent, and that was like you talked about Amani Watts earlier. She's a kid who probably wouldn't have given us a second thought 3 or 4 years ago. But because of the success of the program, kids want to win. So they're willing to take a chance on us. And we've been able to be successful with the group that we have. We always talk about culture and buy-in. And you have to be bought into what we're trying to do. And I think that's probably the most important factor in our success so far.
Amani Watts, by the way, double-double, I should have mentioned. 19.3 points a game, shoots 55% from the floor, hasn't taken a 3 all year, but she's got nearly 12 boards a game on top of that, and is third on the team in assists and tied for the lead in steals. She's obviously a key part of this. You could have had this derailed, to be honest with you, because when you came out of the gate, you played Salisbury, Eastern, Washington, Stevenson, Gallaudet, and you lost 4 of those games. Eastern was the only win. And some of those games weren't close. Salisbury beat you by 22, Washington by 30. Stevenson, you nearly got that one. It was only a 6-point game, and Gallaudet was just a 3-point game. There's a great story, by the way, the Gallaudet women's basketball team with a player that they have on that squad. Then you turn the corner. Cedar Crest certainly helped with that, but you even beat St. Mary's of Maryland. You've beaten Hood. You've gotten into conference play and gotten wins over both those you're familiar and those you're not. How important was almost forgetting the opening start to this season for this team?
To be honest, it wasn't as bad as it sounds, mainly because we had a lot of injuries early. COVID, and so we missed a lot of players missed a lot of practice time. And like I said, we had not 10 freshmen. When you're talking about that many freshmen, trying to teach them the system and what we want them to do, the plays, and if they're not practicing, it takes time. It takes a lot more time. And so once everybody got to going and getting into practice, it started to turn around. And every year I always want to set up a schedule that's tougher than our conference schedule.
It's interesting when you look at the new setup for the UEC. It's basically you're playing the CSAC. You're in the CSAC group, and they're in the UEC group. So it's this unbalanced 10-7 group. But you are kind of this new conference, this new super conference. We've heard the news that Brandywine, should they get through be checked off on the exploratory year, will be joining the conference next year as well as another member. There's a lot of talk that maybe not everybody makes it through this financial times. That's kind of the reason for a lot of this conference size. But you're in a new conference, but you're not. You're kind of playing some new teams, but you're not. This is kind of a little bit of a funky setup, isn't it?
It is. It's a big adjustment, and especially from year to year where we have no idea of how it's going to turn out. So this year we're playing everybody that was old CSAC, and then the two winners will unite for a championship for the automatic bid. Next year, they're telling me that we'll intertwine it somehow. I still don't think they know how, but it's going to be a challenge each year. Only thing I can do is what we can control.
Well, that's the trick here. You've combined conferences. You're essentially playing as the old conference in your side of the conference, but you no longer have that AQ. Now the two of you have to come together, play one game for the one AQ. That's got to be a little frustrating that there's this next extra hoop and one less avenue out.
Yeah, definitely. We have to figure out who we're playing on our side of the division, and then we also have to keep an eye on who's doing what on the other side, because hopefully we'll end up playing one of them in the championship game for the AQ.
Yeah, I get it. I don't get it. I can understand the frustration with it. It's going to be one that's going to be interesting to watch the rest of the way. But again, teams playing well, 11-4 with a young team. Those 4 losses coming in the opening 5 games. You're on a roll here. You're 8-0 in conference play. Everything's coming up roses, as it were, at Notre Dame. You've got to be thrilled with what this season is and how it continues to help you build this program and maybe kind of emerge from maybe even the conversations in Baltimore. Maybe now everyone will kind of take you guys a little bit more seriously.
We hope so. That's the plan. All we can do, like I said, we can do our part is to keep winning and keep drawing in interest. You reached out to us, so hopefully some others will, pay attention and take notice as well.
Well, I appreciate the time you took. I know you want to probably get home at this point after a long day, but I appreciate all the time you gave us, and I appreciate the insight on the program. By the way, for anybody out there wondering, they are literally like wedged between schools. They're right next to Loyola with Johns Hopkins down the street. It is a beautiful campus, but it is a tough location in terms of standing out, and you have stood out, sir, with this program. Congratulations on that. We have a tradition on this show. We always give the guest the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuned in?
Just keep Notre Dame in mind. When you have young ladies that are interested in playing at a high level and the upper level college, keep us in mind. We're trying to do big things.
Yep, I can see it, and I congratulate you for it. Ever since you took over, this program has certainly been a much better program for it. Congratulations again. Take care of yourself, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Take care. Kalin Wynn joining us here on the Hoopsville Hotline. Good to see him again since he took over. He took over as an interim for the 2019-2020 season. 17-9, 14-10, 23-5. Program that normally was well below 500. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll keep talking women's basketball. Head up to Maine, talk to Bowdoin, the 15th ranked Polar Bears. Megan Phelps will join us to talk about her team. You listen to Hoopsville. Back with more after this.
For the love of the game. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that. A lot more.
Sure, the game is important. But as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
We are the coaches of women's basketball. We are leaders and teachers, dreamers and winners. We are professionals who conduct ourselves ethically and with integrity. We place the education, safety, and well-being of the athletes we coach above all else and teach them the fundamental values they need to succeed in life. We are coaches united for the good of our game and those who play it. We are the WBCA.
Responsibility is being accountable for your words and actions, first and foremost. It also is an obligation to be a positive influence in the communities around you. Being in a D3 program, you're going to have lots of different opportunities. You're not just an athlete, you're also involved in student life. Your academics are extremely important. We give a lot of our student athletes responsibilities right from the start by giving them leadership opportunities, by having them engage in the community, be a positive influence. That's being a responsible person.
There are over. Now joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, it's the head coach of the Polar Bears of Bowdoin. It is Megan Phillips. Coach, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time, especially after a rather stormy few weeks up there. I'm sure you don't mind a distraction. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's sunny today in Maine. You wouldn't recognize it, but the pictures up and down the coast look a little bit different.
Yeah, that is saying the least. Wait 5 minutes, right? Yeah, something's bound to change. One thing that's not changing is how well your team is playing. 15-1 on the season, 3-0 so far in NESCAC play. The one loss coming back in mid-November in game number 4 of the season against Whittier in a close one. That game at home, Whittier kind enough to travel.
Yeah.
You've got some, obviously a Springfield team that's maybe not the same Springfield program, but it got a strong win over them to get the season started. You've gotten out strong in conference, including a win over Bates in non-conference play. We should point out that's the little main grouping that is playing there. But you got a significant win over them, considering you're tied with them in conference play. A win over WPI, a win over Chicago, 81-67 while out in Nashville. You cut Chicago just as the wheels are kind of wobbling a little bit. But you've kept it up since then with wins over Middlebury and Williams coming into this one. Listen, on paper, it seems like the Polar Bears are playing really well, maybe flying a little under the radar, surprisingly enough. Ranked 15th. How are things from your perspective?
I don't mind being under the radar. And I do think, the NESCAC is just so competitive that 3 games in, you don't really feel any kind of way, one way or the other. It's a great thing and also a challenging thing to feel like any given night you can win and you can lose. So I'm really proud of the group that I have. I think they're very gritty and they're very poised in the face of adversity, which is not really something that you can teach. I think you can get better at it, but you've either got that or you don't. But I'm super proud of the work that we've done. And I'm excited I honestly keep looking at the calendar. I can't believe it's the middle of January already. It seems like it's flown by.
Yeah, no, time is absolutely flown. It still feels like yesterday was Christmas. Feels like the day before that was Thanksgiving. Obviously things won't get easier from here because you will play the majority of your games on the road the rest of the way. Though you've gotten the big trip against Middlebury and Williams done, you don't have to travel to Hamilton this time around. But you do have trips to Colby and Emmanuel and non-conference play against Emmanuel. Obviously, Colby's down the street. And then you've got Bates and Tufts. So really the only tough one coming up, pun intended, is Tufts. So, yes, majority of them are on the road. Yes, it's NESCAC play. Luckily, though, the worst you got to do is go to Boston.
Yeah. After my sophomores this year, I think we were on a bus every other day during our January break last season. So this year they're like, we love winter break. We actually get to be here a little bit. So trips down to Medford and up to Waterville and Lewiston. Those are easy enough. It's always challenging to play on the road, but at least you're not that Hamilton drive is a doozy. We did that last year.
Yeah, there's no straight shot there. I mean, at least you're starting 3 hours further along than I did on a similar trip to Utica.
Yeah.
But still, you got to drop all the way to Boston before you head over to make that trip easy. But again, like Amherst, for example, is coming to you. Yeah, you had to go to Williams, but you're going to get Amherst at your place. Some of that also benefits you because you're at your home. It's going to be your fans. So the big games, the most important ones, for the most part, are going to be played on your court. And that's got to be an advantage because we all know Bowdoin plays very well at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think I played at Bowdoin, so Morrill's like one of my favorite places in the world. We're really lucky to have the support that we do in our community. And, we're on our winter break right now, so there's not a lot of students on campus, but they come back next week and we'll be excited to, those last games. We play Wesleyan tomorrow, and then that last weekend in NESCAC play will be our senior weekend. So hoping to, honor our seniors in the best way possible. But any chance we get to play in Morrill is always a great one. We really are lucky to have the fans that we do.
Let's talk about this team a little bit. Not surprisingly, in NESCAC play, there isn't a ton of grad students like everybody else seems to populate. But if you look at it, you still have a couple of players considered as 23s, a couple of players as 24s, a handful that are 25s, but a whole mess of them are really a couple of years, or really, as you said, that sophomore class. That's your group. It is that bulk of this team. So how are you balancing the fact that you do have some of that senior leadership and obviously some really good players in that upper class group, with a group that's still all essentially learning and starting to really, put things under their wings, as it were?
Yeah, I think, we're really fortunate to have three incredible captains, Jess Giorgio, Megan Tannen, and Sydney Jones. And they're accompanied by three other upperclasswomen who, there's really no other way to say it. They put the team first in a lot of what they do. And I think they've really taken on a lot of that burden to help those sophomores and first years just get up to speed with. For sophomores, I think it's having expectations, because when you're a first year, it's kind of your head is spinning and you're learning so much, but also there might not be a whole heck of a lot of, expectations. So helping them figure out how to balance that. And then for just our two first years, I mean, after having 6 freshmen last year, just having the 2 this year has been really nice. It's a little bit easier to get them up to speed. But that sophomore class is really incredible. They're incredibly talented. And I think they're very mature for, their grade. And I think they've really risen quite nicely over the course of the year. I think sophomores can be really up and down, and they've done a good job of trying to flatten the curve as it is.
And there's also an element, though, of getting everybody from different backgrounds to kind of coexist. Again, a school like Bowdoin, not surprisingly, you attract from around the country and around the world. Ashland, Massachusetts, Bangor, Maine, Westport, New York, Scranton, Pennsylvania. Nice job grabbing one right out from underneath the Royals there. Westford, Mass, Vernon, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland at Towson High. I certainly know that school well. London, England, Chestnut Hill, Mass, Madison, Wisconsin, Brooklyn, New York, Cheshire, Connecticut, Belmont, Mass. So yeah, you got a little New England, you've got a little international, you got people who aren't even New Englanders. Yeah. So how do you get everybody from so many different backgrounds and understandings of the world to come together in such a cohesive way?
I think, recruiting the right people is a huge part of, I think, finding success. And that's something I learned working for Adrienne Scheibels when she was here and I was her assistant. And when I played for her, if you get the right people, everything else kind of falls into place. And so I think the group that we have, they love basketball, like they are competitive, and they're excellent students. I mean, that's a huge part of being successful at Bowdoin and even getting into the place. And so I think they all really want to be excellent in everything that they do and are willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Then it's just a matter of they spend a ton of time together, and we do a lot to try to intentionally build team first culture. Like we have a team retreat in the fall, like we do mentoring. We have our alums are super invested in the program and always willing to like talk with them and give back. And so I think just creating that family atmosphere doesn't happen by accident, but it does make it easier when you've got people coming from all different places in the world, different kinds of programs, winning, losing programs, helping them to kind of find their common ground. Just comes with a lot of like intentional time and the shared goal of winning basketball games. I think that really helps in the end.
Your team mainly led on the score sheet by those upperclassmen, though you can see the signs of the underclassmen, as it were. I'm kind of delineating that between senior, junior, sophomore, freshman.
Yeah.
I consider it 3 figures and players in double figures, 4 who are pretty close. Sydney Jones, upperclassman, 15.4 points, 6.5 rebounds, top assist distributor as well. On top of that, she's also got the most steals. Obviously, everything goes through Jones, but you've got Callie Godfrey as an upperclassman at 12 points a game and 5 rebounds a game. Carly Davey, who's one of those underclassmen, one of that sophomore group at nearly 10 points a game, 3 rebounds per contest. She's second on the team in assists. And then Megan Tan, again, another upperclassman, is that they're at 8.6 points a game. So you've got a little bit of a mix, but it's still, at least on the score sheet, the upperclassmen that are kind of leading the way.
Yeah, I think Megan and Carly are a great duo to talk about because, last season, Meg was our second leading scorer. She was our point guard, our best defender, and she went down our last game before the winter break, season-ending injury, tore her Achilles. And so Carly was just a first year who had to step in to be a starting point guard and play a lot of minutes in a really tough league. And I think she rose to the occasion incredibly well. But I think you see the benefits, as hard as that was last season, the benefits really shine through this year because Carly is playing older than a sophomore. And we have Megan back, and having them both on the court at the same time has really, it's lent itself to a really nice spread of creating offense. And one of the things we talk a lot about is not really caring who the leading scorer is in any game. And I think my team's really bought into that. They kind of like it, they're all taking turns. But I think having a lot of different weapons that you can go to and talking about like roles and doing your job has really lent itself to a lot of our success.
Just going back through games in the last 5, for example, Sydney Jones leads the team with 23 points. No one else in double figures against Williams. You go to the Middlebury game, it's Godfrey who leads the team with 19 points. It's Quinn, Ashley Quinn off the bench with 18 in a close game, we should point out. It was a 3-point win over the Panthers, whereas Tan got 11 points. You go to the Southern Maine game, granted a Southern Maine team that's not exactly the same as we're used to, but still, you look at where you all were, it's 20 points from Jones, it's 11 from Tan, it's 9 from Quinn. You go to the Trinity game, and it's, again, 20 from Davey now this time. It's 13 from Jones. The Bowdoin-Husson game, you dive into that one, and you realize, geez, it's 23 points again from Jones, but it's Godfrey with 16. My point being, yeah, the sheets say one thing, but you're willing to go. You've played, I think, everybody but one in 2/3 of the games. You've played about 10 players in pretty much every game, and you're getting contributions in a significant manner, at least offensively, from 5 or 6 different players in just the last 5. If I'm an opposing coach, I might be able to figure out who to key on one. It's the second and third and fourth options that might kill me.
Yeah, I think when you say it like that, I mean, it sounds pretty great. I think we're really fortunate to have super talented players, but, I hear you say that, and a huge point of emphasis for us in the off season last year was our fitness. I think we would shoot 40% on the Friday in NESCAC play and 20 on the Saturday. And that's not a skill level thing. That's a fitness thing. And so I'm super proud of the work that they did in the off season and to put themselves in a position to be here. And I think they really dedicated a lot of time and effort to improving. And it does make it, I hope, challenging for other teams to scout us. But I think it's more just our players being ready to take advantage of opportunities. We talk a lot about how you never know when your time is going to come, and you've always got to be prepared to take advantage of it when it does. And I think they've done a really good job 1 through 14 of, being ready for their moment and kind of starring in their role. The offense has been good. The defense still needs to get better, but the offense has been pretty good thus far.
I'll get to that in a moment. I do want to dip back to last year for a moment since you bring it up. You guys started really strong. You had 1 loss against Smith by the time you got to the holidays, and a loss to New York too. Both tight games. Yeah. NYU was a 3-point loss. Smith was a 5-point loss. You have 2 losses, and I think it was 8 wins by the time we got into January. And by the time this point of the season had hit, you were in the midst of losing 4 out of 5. You lost 8 of the final 13. To your point, you look at a result like at Middlebury on the 13th of January last year, 84-68 the loss. The next day you play Williams and you lose them 48-40. To your point, scoring just depleted, disappeared. That happened on several occasions, especially on the back-to-back. You beat Bates by 8, you lose to Tufts by 12 the next day, and you don't even put up 2/3 of what you put up the day before. So that's an interesting perspective on that. As a former athlete, there's one thing to tell me I got to get in better shape. There's one thing to tell me I got to do X, Y, and Z to do those things to get better shape. I've got a son just down the hallway that trying to drive into his head that he's got to get in shape. He's got to go out there and run. He's got to do wind sprints. He's got to do these things is one thing. To see it happen is another. What was the key to get them motivated to understand that? Or was it simply the results?
One thing that I love about the women I get to work with at Bowdoin, they're incredibly intelligent. And they always want to know the why of anything that we do. If I feel like I always joke with them in practice, if I haven't thought of every possible question, they will think of it and be like, so what about this?
Oh, that's cool.
It's awesome. But I think that just having the stats and the results to your point, I think kind of spoke for themselves in regard to like, okay, this is something that's fully in your circle of control, that just, it's not fun. Nobody loves, I mean, gosh, me as a player was certainly never probably in the best fitness shape that I could be. But I think we have a great strength and conditioning staff here that really put together a great program for us. And I think at the end of the day, it just takes a lot of work ethic and discipline. But my assistant is Abby Kelly, who was an incredible player for us here. And I think Abby was a player who really went through that journey of increasing her fitness over her time at Bowdoin. And you know, she's a perfect example of the way that it can all play out. And I think she was really helpful in, you know, kind of lighting a path for them. She's been everywhere that they want to be. And so to have her there as a resource for them to ask for workout advice or, you know, what kind of stuff should I be focusing on? That I can't underscore how incredibly helpful that was. But I think at the end of the day, it's just every player who came back this year improved every single lift test that we test and every speed test. Every single person. I was ready to come in the first day of practice and go really hard, and they just warmed my heart right off the bat. So
I can't run you now.
I know. I can't say enough about the work that they put in and the difference that it's made.
You had a handful of back-to-backs. Bridgewater, you beat 58-44, lost to Whittier 61-57. Okay, it's a loss, but you put up the same amount of points. So to your argument that, you know, at least your shooting, the offense stayed consistent in that scenario. You beat Kenyon and then beat Chicago. Honestly, Kenyon could have been the trap game there looking ahead at Chicago, and you still got it done the next day, and you beat Chicago handily. You beat Middlebury and Williams on back-to-backs. Yeah, the scoring was a little bit down. Listen, I'll give Pat Manning her due. She always has a defense that's going to kill you.
She does. Gosh, they both do. I mean, I think Williams and Middlebury are both just really incredible. That's a tough back-to-back. I mean, you could argue that about any of the NESCAC weekends, I'm sure, but you knew you were going to get two great defenses going into the weekend. So I don't know.
And then you only really have one left. It's Bates and Tufts. It's on the road, interesting enough. I don't know what your plans are, but you'll probably spend the night at your place since you're just heading up the street to Bates, come back home, spend the night, then head down to Boston for the game against Tufts. That's it. The rest of them are at least spread out, or you got a day in between. Colby and Emmanuel, for example, you've got a day in between. Yeah. So it feels like the toughest part is a little bit behind you in terms of the structure of the schedule. Yeah. I know the toughest part of who you have ahead of you. So what's the motivation of the team? What's the message about how you're going to get through February 19th for starters and then the conference playoffs? How do you keep them focused on the task or what you need them to do from here on out? Basically, what's the message in the locker room?
Yeah, I think the mantra of this season has been nameless, faceless opponents. I think we've really been trying to focus on us and what we can control and trying to figure out a way to prepare for every game the exact same. You know, you spoke to Kenyon in Chicago. Kenyon is a really good team. I mean, their bigs are so talented, and it would be easy to look at Chicago. Shout out Maria, she's a Bowdoin women's basketball alum, and really overlook Kenyon. But that's something we've been talking about since November, that it doesn't matter who we're playing. It's about the product that we're putting on the court and the effort that we're putting out there. And so in some ways, I think the message hasn't really changed. I've had a lot of people ask like, oh, you're in the top 25 now and you've got expectations. Are you worried about your players? And I don't really think that it changes anything for us. I think when you're at a place like Bowdoin, there are expectations. There were expectations last year when I came here for my first season. And so I think in some ways it's just another day for us. And so the message doesn't change. I think it's about focusing on what we can control and just trying to get better. I think if anything, sometimes you learn more from a loss than you do from a win. And so, if we drop a game between now and February, I know it'll be for good reasons, hopefully, that are going to help us be successful when it comes time for the playoffs.
I know it's taking a bunch of your time. I just found it so fascinating what you're diving into. And so maybe this segment's going longer than we normally have. So at this point, I got to be smart and just cut off, or I'll keep going down this rabbit hole. But I do want to ask about you a little bit. I don't remember if we talked about it last time. You played under Adrian Scheibels. You were an assistant under Adrian. You, I think, followed her to Dartmouth, if I remember correctly, for a year, and then took this job when it opened up yet again. How hard was it, to leave being a Scheibels assistant and always being with Adrian and to take over a program and then take over her program, to be honest, even if it was a year separated. But then also, how hard is it to see that it didn't work for her at Dartmouth? She's walked away. She's now at Bates as a non-coach, and seeing you've got the reins of the program that she made so famous and did so well with.
Yeah. I mean, Adrian is like one of the most special people in my life. I think we're both Mainers, and, I think getting to learn from her as a player and then again as an assistant, taught me the value of mentorship. And I think if I can have half the impact on my players that she had on me, I'm doing a pretty good job. So it was really hard to stop being her assistant. I mean, we'd been working together for 6 years, but I think she was really excited for me. She was obviously so supportive and so helpful to me in the process. And I think it's been really cool to have her, as an AD down the road at Bates. We get coffee, we get breakfast. I talk to her a lot. She's still a really important mentor to me. Unless we're playing the Bobcats, then she has to hopefully recuse herself. But she's one of the most important people in my life, and honestly, one of the best to ever do it. So I feel incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunity to both play and coach with her. I think last season was a lot of probably every other week, me texting her to be like, remember when you told me how hard it was to be a head coach? You were right. This is hard. And so it's nice to have somebody who understands exactly how hard it is. She's the best.
We should point out the schools are about 30, 40 miles apart, or minutes apart, depending on which route and how fast you want to put that right foot down on the floor.
Yeah, usually pretty fast for both of us.
Yeah, no, trust me, I grew up in Maine. You want to get there. You don't want to linger. There's absolutely no point. Listen, could dive into many more topics. I'll let it go at that, though, but I really appreciate your time. I know we'll get you on another time and talk about those things and talk about everything else. But congratulations on the season so far. Really, I think you're literally flying under the radar at 15. I think, but that's a good thing, right? Good luck the rest of the way. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuned in?
No, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. Appreciate what you guys do for the sport. It's really awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and finding time as well. Good luck the rest of the way. Take care of yourselves, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Awesome. Thank you.
Megan Phillips joining us here on the Hoopsville Hotline. Thanks to Coach for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Great conversation with her. NESCAC race is going to be interesting. I think Bowdoin is in a pretty good spot there. They got a good game against Bates. It's going to have a big impact on that. Amherst women are starting to play better again as well. That race is far from over. Of course, New England, Rhode Island College has showed that maybe all roads will go through Providence, Rhode Island instead. We'll take another break. When we come back, we will talk more. Well, we'll head out west, actually, and talk men's basketball. We'll talk to Cal Lutheran men's basketball, to be exact. You listen to Hoopsville. Back with more after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was scared and shy. It was hard to look at people's faces. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. I made friends and won lots of gold medals. But I learned more than just playing golf. Special Olympics helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Division III allows you to give yourself to other things.
Having that free time allows me to pursue the things that I want to pursue.
Division III athletics affords students the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport.
It allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
Now joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, all the way from the West Coast, from Cal Lutheran, it is Russell White joining us on the show. First and foremost, sir, thanks for taking the time. I know our weathers are a little bit different, so I hope you're enjoying the sunny, mild weather out there on the West Coast.
Definitely enjoying it. Got the baseball team started practice today, so it was exciting.
Yeah, it's just mind-blowing to me that a baseball team is already practicing in any general sense. It doesn't make sense in my head. I have trouble with the MLB team starting in February. Let's talk about this team. Listen, this is a program that I think a lot of people have been looking to have a breakout season. Listen, 2016, 2017, I know you weren't there yet. 20-7 campaign, can't win more than 9 after that. But since the pandemic, a 17-10 campaign turned into a 13-14 campaign. I think everybody got distracted. There's Claremont Mudd Scripps. There's Pomona Pitzer. There's, here's this team, Redlands, etc. These are who we watch. Suddenly, 12-3 on the season, 5-1 in conference play. You are very much in the battle as of this moment at the top of this conference and seemingly have broken through, turned the corner with this program.
Kind words. It's been a journey. The guys that are seniors now are guys that were in our first recruiting class here 3-4 years ago. Gone through it all. We've scheduled hard on purpose. That 17-8 campaign from a couple years ago, we had a couple local transfer guys from higher levels that really came in, Mason Johnson and Jacob Alonzo, and helped establish a little bit of a winning culture and work ethic and what it takes to be good. Lost them, had a bunch of guys. We were pretty young last year, worked our way through some tough losses, go to Whitworth, get crushed, go to Redlands, get crushed, keep working our way through a couple other tough losses here and there, but really start playing our best basketball at the end of the year, beat Pomona on the road, beat Redlands on the road to make the tournament, go to Rowan, give them a game. And our top 8 guys are coming back from last year. So we knew this was going to be it should be a really good year for us. I don't know how many radars we were on, and that really doesn't matter, but we bring in 2 transfers to fill in a couple gaps, another post guy, a little more length on the wing. And here we are, we're pretty deep. We defend well. We've been playing a lot of tough games. We got a very, very competitive team. It's been a lot of fun.
Start the season 4-3. The last 2 games going 1-1 in conference play, but I find the schedule fascinating. You stayed at home to start things off against North Central of Illinois, who traveled out to the West Coast, and then Puget Sound came down to play you all. Then you decided to get on a plane, head to the East Coast. You were in my neck of the woods, even though I didn't get a chance to see you. You were at Randolph-Macon on November 19th. You were at Stevenson the 21st. I got to go look at my schedule, figure out how I missed that game. And then at Hood out in Frederick, Maryland, on the 24th before returning home and getting into conference action. We are getting used to SCIAC teams starting to travel more. We've seen them at the D3Hoops.com Classic in Las Vegas on the men's side more often. We see them get to Texas. We see them get to the Midwest. I cannot remember the last time I saw a SCIAC team on the East Coast. What was the driving force behind making sure you guys got games all the way out here?
Well, to be frank, I wanted to play Randolph-Macon. I wanted to, if you want to be really good, you gotta play really good teams. And I was in Fort Wayne 2 years ago when Randolph-Macon rolled through everyone. I got to watch the semis. I went out there purposely to see what that level was. I was a high school coach for 25 years. I was in the program at Cal Lu. I was a player for a couple of years back in the early 90s. But coaching high school for so long, I always followed my team. I always knew how good we were, I knew our record. I knew the guys on the team. I knew the coaches, but I just didn't know what was good at this level. So I went out there to watch. I saw it. I think I picked up some things and learned some things, but you want to be good, you got to play the teams that are really good. And my first assistant knew Josh Merkel, gave me his number. We reached out. I started bothering him. We'd like to come out. We'd like to come out. We'd like to come out. And he agreed to playing us this year. And we're obviously not going to travel across the country and play 1 game or even 2. It's a whole nother segment, but scheduling for the SCIAC teams is a bit of a challenge, as you can imagine. Our closest non-league game is a 6-hour bus ride, and so getting non-league games is a challenge. So when we travel, we're going to most likely play 3 games, and we'll go for 6-7 days, sometimes 8 days. And when Josh agreed to play us, which was amazing, then I just reached out to every Division III program I could find between Baltimore, between Philly and Ashland, Virginia, and found a couple takers, and there you go. We're on the East Coast for a week. We're gonna go to Illinois Wesleyan next year. I think we're going to Ohio the year after that. Go to Boston the year after that. I mean, for me, just making those trips is also part of the experience. A lot of our guys don't get out there very much. So not only were we in DC, but we go sightsee as much as we can. I'm a former history teacher. I like to throw my random tidbits in there. So, but that's how it went down. We wanted to play Randolph-Macon and found some other games.
I did check. I was at my own game when you were over at Stevenson. I was about 15 minutes away at my own game. Though the 19th, I was apparently free. Who knows? Maybe I had some family stuff going on that I can't think of. Oh, that's right. My mom was in town. She had flown to the East Coast as well. So there you go. Great to get that insight and understanding. You guys start 4-3. You lose to Macon by 9. That's not a bad result. You beat Stevenson by 4. You lost to Hood, who's proven to be a very good team, by 3. Then you return home and you get a win on the road at Redlands, 74-65, before coming back 5 days later and Christopher Newport clipped you guys by 5. All in all, though, when you really dive into that 4-3, that's a solid 4-3. And so maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but after that, you guys started rolling.
We keep finding ways to get a little better. Playing hard games makes you better. I've always believed that. Even when I was coaching in high school, we always tried to schedule the best teams, and that's how you get better. And going to Randolph-Macon was super valuable. Josh and I have talked about it since then, how valuable it was for us, and he's said it was really valuable for his team as well. I mean, we play physical, we defend well. I'd like to get a little more consistent offensively, but playing those hard teams, going to Redlands, going to Claremont, going to Macon, going to Hood. I mean, that Hood thing was nuts. It was the last day of our trip. I mean, we play at 1:00. We got an 8:00 flight, and I don't even know. One of our guys actually breaks the rim in pregame. So they take a rim down from a side basket, put it on the main basket. We're not even sure if we're going to be able to play. And we're on day 8 of an 8-day trip. I mean,
for my own sake, what airport are you going to?
WI.
Okay, so relatively close.
Wasn't awful, but we got a hard out. Told Chad, hey, if we don't start this thing by 2:30, we're not going. This ain't going to happen because we're not missing this flight. And, it's Thanksgiving weekend, yada, yada. And so we play and they're really good. It's a 3-point game. We're right there the whole way. We make a couple mistakes down the stretch. We do some, whatever. But that whole process of going on the road and playing those games, even going to Stevenson, it was snowing that night, all of it just makes us better. And that's why we do it. That's why we're going to Illinois Wesleyan next year. I think, we're looking, we're not locked into it, but we're heavily considering going to Marietta's tip-off tournament in 2 years. And that's why we called Tufts to come out, and UT Dallas. And we want to play good teams. That's how we're going to be good. And
hey,
I think
there's a nice event in Vegas.
I do. But if I can get teams to come to SoCal.
Oh, no, I get that. I'm just saying, if you want tough teams, though.
I know. It's always in the back of my mind. But if I can get good teams to come to Cal Lu, why would I go to Vegas?
No. Listen, I'm not. No. Not
it's
saying anything. If you're getting the good teams, that's the key. There are some in your conference and elsewhere who claim they can't get any opponents. And I'm like, well, you could just go to Vegas and get them. You guys are getting them. So I'm tongue in cheek completely on that. But what's fascinating about that is you come out of that trip And again, you split with Redlands and Claremont Mudscripts in conference play. Then you got Illinois Wesleyan, Kalamazoo, Tufts, and Texas Dallas in your next 4, all at home. And you win all 4. An Illinois Wesleyan team that looks a little Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, but still a good team. Kalamazoo, who I think's on the up and coming here. Tufts, who until the last couple of weeks looked like one of the best teams in Division III. Conference has kind of humbled them a little bit, but still, you get a win out there. I think, actually I got to double check. That might have been their first loss of the season. And then you follow it up with a solid win over Texas Dallas, and you have used that to roll because now you've gone through Occidental, Chapman, Laverne, and Pomona-Pitzer. In conference play, you sit now 5-1 in SCIAC action. You are on top by a half game on Pomona-Pitzer and Claremont Mudscripts. Again, you already have the win over Pomona-Pitzer. This is a great position to be in at this point, and you played tough teams that have got to be giving you a ton of confidence.
Tons. And we're up for the challenge. I mean, we keep talking about it, but all those games have made us ready. We're excited to be here. I mean, this is certainly this is uncharted territory for the Kingsmen for a while, and certainly new for these guys. But we did go to the tournament last year. We did go to Rowan. We've the SCIAC is really good. I know we don't get a whole lot of love on the national level, but it's good basketball. The coaches are good. The players are good. And we're in this dogfight, and go to Whittier on Wednesday and keep plugging along. I mean, the attention's great, but how we deal with that attention is really going to determine how far we go. We know we can play with anybody. We went to Macon, played with them. We Tufts, we play. I mean, we're playing with everyone. We beat Redlands at Redlands. We go to Pomona and win. Like, we know we can play with everyone. You still got to go play. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You got to go play well. We're probably not going to go anywhere and get absolutely thumped, but we could certainly go anywhere and lose, including Whittier on Wednesday night. But we do things that travel. We defend well. We play physical. We don't foul. Those are going to help us be successful. I mean, we went to Laverne last week and went 1 for 12 from the 3-point line and found a way to drive home with a dub. So we've done all the things to prepare us to be ready. Now we just got to keep playing. I know it's coach speak, but it's not wrong.
We'll talk about the conference a bit because I do want to build to that, but I want to jump into the team while we have a moment. This is a very top-heavy team in terms of seniors and juniors and the experience that you guys all have. You only have 6 sophomores and freshmen combined in a 3-3 split. The rest of this roster is seniors and juniors, so they have that experience. And as you said earlier, they're the ones who kind of went through the rough patches of this program and have built up. So you've got a lot of experience. You're going to lose some, obviously, ahead of next year, but you still bring back a wealth of that. You're led by, let's see here. I would consider it 4 guys in double figures. Devon Lewis at 14.5 points a game. Brock Susko at 11.5, 9.8 from Tommy Griffiths. And we're going to fudge it by saying that Patrick Renane at 9.2s in double figures as well. They all pull down the same amount of rebounds. They all pretty much hand out the same amount of assists. They all get steals. They all shoot pretty well. That foursome obviously jumps out at you when we look at the scoring sheets and when we look at the stats. But what is it not telling us about either that core 4 or the rest of this group? Because you also have played a lot of players this season.
We're pretty deep. That's my quick answer. We got a deep squad. Devin leads the squad at 4, like you said, 14.5 a game. He's probably our best one-on-one, go get a bucket guy. Patrick and Tommy are both 6'7" with fantastic post moves. But if you look at the numbers, they're actually our top 2 3-point shooting threats as well at 6'7" and 6'8". Brock's was our top 3-point shooter last year, still doing it, still at a good clip this year, but we're deep. I mean, we go to Pomona and we grind out a grimy W. We had 9 guys score, 10 guys score at least 4 points, and our leading scorer was 11. Second leading scorer was 10. The leading scorer of 11 was a guy that hadn't led the team in scoring all year, Nick Atanasio, one of our 2 transfers that's playing for us. We're just pretty deep, and all the guys are capable of doing things, and they play well together. So it's one of the advantages we have is how deep we are, and it's a pick your poison type of mentality. But I also would say our assist percentage, the number of baskets that we score that are assisted, I don't know that, I don't look at them that high, but I would venture to say it's pretty high if you look at a national rank. I don't look that hard at it, but we share the ball pretty well.
Jumping back into the conference, you've got a game at Whittier coming up. Then you'll play home against Cal Tech. Then you'll have the rematch at home against Claremont Mudd Scripps. By the way, the rematch with Pomona won't be until the end of the season. Obviously, everybody mixed in between. I said this when I was out in Las Vegas. I was telling you in pregame or in pre-show here. I saw Laverne and Whittier in Las Vegas, and I'm stunned when I look at their overall records because they are not bad teams. They are good teams that play hard, play well, have had tough results, had close results. But to see them at below 500 is stunning to me, and it made me appreciate when I also saw Pomona Pitzer. This is a deep conference this year, and there is almost no one, not that you would overlook, but no one you can make mistakes again and get away against it. Or let me try that again. No one you can make mistakes against and get away with it.
I think you're 100% accurate, and the league's only getting better. Last 2 years, we've got 2 bids, which hadn't happened in, I think, 17, 18 years. I don't know exactly. It's been a long time, and this is the league top to bottom is better this year than it was the last 2 years. I mean, I think if things play out right, I think we had a nice, I don't look at the analytics a ton, but I think we had a very good preseason as a league. We certainly scheduled well. I know Redlands played a lot of good teams. We played a lot of good teams. Pomona played good teams. Claremont played good teams. This is a really good league with really good coaches. We're just out of the national spotlight because when everyone else is going to bed, we're starting our games, and we just don't get the attention that I would say all of us coaches, the 9 coaches in the SCIAC, feel like we're worthy of. But that's not going to change, and we just got to keep plugging and playing those hard teams. And now it's time to start. Ultimately, it's time to start doing well in the tournament. Pomona had that great team 2 years ago, and then the pandemic stopped their run. They're literally on the plane going to Elmhurst, and everything gets canceled after going to Emory and winning twice in the tournament. We're on the up for sure. We're definitely on the rise. I mean, I think competition rises the boat, tide rises the boat for everyone type deal. I mean, I know Bridgeland is building a monster over there. We're trying to get good. Ken and Charlie always have good programs. Chapman's a monster. It's a good league. It's a good league.
Yeah, I would argue this might be the best I've seen this league, maybe ever. And look, we got very used to the top teams being good, a Pomona, a Claremont, a Redlands, whomever, being good at the top, then the middle group being competitive, but not being maybe more than a scare occasionally. In the bottom, the Caltech story is famous about how they couldn't win a game for years. And while they may not be at what we've gotten used to in the last handful of years, it feels like the middle now is far better. And the top, while it has gotten better, now has a real problem with the middle. And we're rotating. Now you're at the top, and you've got other teams here. This feels like the toughest I've ever seen this conference.
I 100% agree. And I would venture to say it's only going to keep getting better because we're going to try and get better. We know everyone else is going to, no one likes losing, right? I mean, the hard part is getting those games, that strength of schedule up, scheduling. We have to really work to get a full 25 slate of D3 games, and not everybody in our league does that. Not every school has the ability to fundraise and travel. Not every school is allowed to travel. Some of these schools travel every other year, and then getting teams to come out here. I probably sent 5 to 10 emails fairly regularly. I don't want to say weekly, but just random emails to coaches around the country. Hey, you want to come to SoCal and play? Just hounding and loitering, and probably getting sent into junk mail and spam sometimes. But it's just really hard to schedule good games. But we're starting to do it. And that's why I mean, I remember there was talk of maybe 3 Sky teams last year making it, and then we crashed the party. But the league is better this year. I mean, Chapman beat George Fox at George Fox. George Fox went to Emory and won. And Chapman right now, I think, is 2-3 in league. I mean, the league is really, really good. And my venture is it's only going to get better. We just have to keep scheduling those non-conference top teams to continue to get that, I guess, national respect. But it's a really good league.
While the scheduling has gotten better, certainly we've seen that. What's changed in the recruiting world? Because it feels like you guys are getting talent that would maybe come in drips and drabs to some teams. Now more of you are getting more of it.
I can only speak for me. Every school, I know I'm learning that every school has their own lane for good recruiting.
Quirks.
And we're trying to find ours still. I mean, it's been a process. We're definitely, like I said, going back to the Final Four 2 years ago and just seeing what it took to be a really good Division III team. The one thing I took out of that was older players. Marietta was there. They had 4. I mean, I remember looking at it. There was 4 teams there. Everybody was playing 8 to 9 guys. That's 36 players. I mean, if I literally looked at all the rosters of the 36 guys that were playing, 32 and a half, 33 were seniors, juniors. I'm like, okay, we got to be old. So now my philosophy is, okay, we're not going to get freshmen that come in and make major contributions, but can we bring guys in that have potential, find those guys that have potential and get them better one way or another? And ultimately it's what's in them. Like the guys we have now, Brock Susko, Devin Lewis, Desi Burridge, all Stephen Davis, these guys, they have put in the work to become better players since they got here. That's where I would say for us, that's where our success has been. We have seniors and juniors that have been here that work really hard to get better. They really want to get coached. They want to get better. They put the work in. That's where our success has been. We definitely are recruiting. My first year we recruited everyone because we didn't know. And now we're more selective. We just are. We know what it takes to be successful, and we're recruiting to that. So, and then we recruit better. We get better. No one likes losing. So if you have the will, you're gonna adapt and overcome and try and figure out how to be better. And I think that's what's going on in the SCIAC. I mean, I think Bridgeland has raised the bar for everyone. Everyone knows what Bridgeland's going to do. He's going to raise that program to a high level. And if we want to compete, we've got to find ways to do it.
Looking quickly at the whole athletic department, there have been a handful of national championships in its history. 1971 with the baseball program. The football program. 2 from water polo in 07 and 2010. Women's volleyball got it in 2015. Baseball won one in 2017. Big one, though, here this past December with the women's soccer team coming out here. 19-1-6 is their overall record, winning with 3 major injuries in the championship game over a powerhouse in WashU. And in WashU, just their second loss on the season. What kind of motivation or impetus or push does something like that bring to everybody else?
I know for me, it makes it possible. It makes it, puts it on the table. Hey, this is something that is doable. I mean, you need luck. I mean, how Frank and I talked about it a little bit since it happened. Frank Marino's our head women's soccer coach, been here for 15 years and always been really good, top of the league, always kind of 1-2 them in Pomona. And you go through a run like that. Anyone that's been through a run like that knows there's probably some luck and some karma involved, but Frank had a really, really deep team. As you mentioned, 3 major injuries going into the finals. Players step up, make plays, but how he built a program, how he's maintained the program. Frank works really hard. We're in the same office, and for me, it was like, okay, there is a path here. It's never going to be easy. We're on the West Coast. there's innate challenges for us, whether it's scheduling or traveling or whatever it may be. But it's possible. And having a conversation about, hey, what did you do differently? You know, this is the first time they made a big run. What did you do differently? Having those conversations with him, just definitely inspiring. I mean, I told Frank that when he got back, like, that's inspiring, man. I hope we can all find some motivation in that and learn from him and keep grinding. I mean, you know, it's Division III athletics. It's not always easy to find the resources to be successful. Or, I mean, no one expected Frank's team to make that run, and I don't even know if anyone knows this, but the day the football season ended and we knew that our women's soccer team was not hosting after the SCIAC championships, we tore out our sod. We tore out our turf and our field to redo it, to get it ready for women's lacrosse. Then they go to Pomona, win both games, and now they need a place to practice. So we're scrambling for practice times. Angel City Football Club, which is the LA professional team, has a field on campus. We had to deal with that. I mean, it just D3, you know, as someone says, D3, hashtag D3 problems. I mean, that's just what, and they went through it all and they figured it out and they just kept grinding. Funny, not funny, but fun. When we went to Randolph-Macon, our women's soccer team was playing at Christopher Newport in round 3. So we got to go as a squad. And
oh, that's cool.
Our guys were on the sideline in their puffer jackets.
That's really cool.
It was, there's some good pictures. There's a picture of both teams after the game. It was great stuff. But first and foremost, it showed it's possible even now. And secondly, it was incredibly inspirational for all of us. I mean, our guys got to watch it happen, and, you know, we were a long way from that, but we know it's possible. I mean, going to Randolph-Macon and competing, I mean, that was a tie game with 2.5 minutes left, beating Illinois Wesleyan, going to Redlands and winning after they went to the GLI and torched people.
Yeah,
we go to their
absolutely.
place and handle them, and we know we can compete. Now we just got to go out and play and hopefully stay healthy.
Well, hey, I appreciate the perspective, the detail, and the understanding of not only the program but the SCIAC, but also the department. It's great to have you on and to chat about it. As I said with the Bowdoin coach, I could go down this rabbit hole further and further, but we should let you go, and we got other guests to get to. But really appreciate the insight, and thank you for that, and wish you luck the rest of the way. I think the SCIAC race is going to be a blast. I'd love to see 3 teams come out of here and really shake things up for everybody. But we'll have to wait a little bit longer to see if that can come to fruition. But as always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who tuned in?
I really, really appreciate the platform to talk about our team and our league. And I appreciate what all you guys, all of the D3 world, social media, Hoopsville world does to promote our level. I do truly believe it's the best level to coach. I mean, we've got 15 to 20 guys on all 430 coaches in the country, got 15 to 20 guys that are paying to play college basketball, and they love it. And it's really fun. It's really fun coaching guys like this that just want to come play and get coached. And it's even a little more fun when you win a little bit more than you have in the past. So I appreciate you having me. I appreciate everything Hoopsville does, and I look forward to the next opportunity if we continue to stay worthy.
Oh, absolutely appreciate your time, and congrats. Fun team to watch. I look forward to tuning into more games. I'm usually up when you're playing, so I try and tune in when I can. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the weather, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely. He's Russell White from Cal Lu men's basketball. Appreciate Coach coming on. Great conversation to have there. A little longer than we normally have, but so much to dive into and great responses from Coach. Again, Cal Lutheran on top of that conference. Worth watching. Their schedule obviously doesn't get any easier as they'll take on Whittier, who I think is pretty good. And of course, it's on the road at Whittier. Then it's Cal Tech, but then it ratchets up. Claremont Mud Scripps, followed by Chapman, and then Laverne. Quickly looking at the Southern Collegiate Athletic Conference, we mentioned Trinity, Texas now. Their first loss of the season, they're in a tie with St. Thomas. Shriners 2 games behind both of them at 5-3 in conference play. The rest of this conference is interesting. We'll keep an eye on it, but right now it looks like the Trinity and St. Thomas race with Schreiner trying to play spoiler. Hardin-Simmons is on top of the ASC on Texas Dallas and Laterno. Marathon Baylor is 8-8 this season. Not what we expected from the crew. And then the Northwest Conference, George Fox got out to a great start, and then both Whits knocked him out this weekend. Whitworth's undefeated in conference play at 6-0. They're 10-5 overall. George Fox is in a three-way tie with Whitman and Puget Sound at 4, and Puget Sound at a three-way tie at 4-2 each. 11-4 is George Fox. So a good start, but the Whits got both of them. Take a break. When we come back, we will talk Maryville men's basketball here on the show. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC 1927. That's NABC.com or NABC 1927 on social media.
Something I discovered in myself is that if I have a goal, then I can accomplish it.
It's a well-rounded experience.
At a Division III school, you primarily a student athlete, so the school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual.
It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all.
It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate, dedicated, supportive. You know the tension of a close game and the thrill of the win. So while you're cheering, keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
I learned a lot of valuable lessons playing college football. I never thought about the health benefits of exercise until I actually started to talk to coaches in college. It's not only just for performance, it's for life. My coaches instilled the importance of well-being, not only building up strength, mental health, getting enough sleep, eating properly is all what it is to be healthy. I decided that I want to go into personal trainer and share my knowledge that I obtained in college about physical and mental well-being.
For the love of the game, but for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com. Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. So continue to roll along.
Don't forget, coming up, Ryan Scott and Bob Quillman will join us to talk about the top 25 and get their deep dive, their debatable and their dubious choices out of the way. That always gets a little bit of an excitement out there for all the land. We'll see what their thoughts are on all of that. All right, let's talk men's basketball and continue the conversation. We head down to the Old South region, the Region 6, and the Collegiate Sports. I never get this right. The CSS. I never get this conference name right, and it's been around. It's been around for a little while. You would think my brain would, compute the simple facts of Division III, but I can't. This conference is just one of those that just doesn't ring easily. So we'll bring in an expert on it all to talk about it. Maryville, Tennessee. They are on top of said conference. Coach, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time, especially for my bumbling idiocy.
All right. We're used to it. We're used to it.
You're used to my bumbling idiocy? Is that what you're saying? Brilliantly. Well played, sir. Well played.
We work with you. We work with you.
Yeah,
we work with you.
I think you work against me, but that's okay. Hey, again, Collegiate Conference of the South was what I was trying to get to. Some reason I take CCS and I try and make it CSS, so it could be CSC, which is the Collegiate Sports Directors, or it could be some security thing running your local stadium, but whatever, lots of C's and S's. You guys are in a three-way tie with Belhaven and Berea atop this conference this year. Belhaven having a really good season at 12-4. You guys are 11-5. Berea's 8-9, but a sneaky good 8-9. From your perspective, though, how's this conference race been so far?
I think we're having a really good year as a conference. I know this is only our second year together, but a lot of these teams are familiar from the old USA South or the Great South Athletic Conference from the late 90s, early 2000s. So we've done really well. Typically we're not at the top half of the 44 conferences around the country in regards to record. I think our top 4 or 5 teams actually are having good seasons. We just played Berea last week, beat them at home, lost to Belhaven, who's a very talented team, who's also challenged themselves out of league this year. We're up 14 with 7 minutes to go, and we just couldn't finish. But it's a tough place to play, and they have a really good team. And then, Piedmont has had some good victories, and they have a good team, a really good player as well. And Kendall at LaGrange always is pushing to get to the conference championship. So, the top half this year is really strong, and Huntington and Coach Zach Richards, new coach there at Huntington, has the guys playing much better. I think they've improved 6 or 7 wins from last year already. So the league is definitely better this year. And, big week this week. Hopefully, God willing, we can get the games in. We got Belhaven here Friday night for first place. So we're excited about that.
Your season's been kind of fits and famine, or spits and spats might be a better way to do it. Started the season with 2 losses when you went up to Rochester to play Rowan and then Rochester out there in upstate New York. I think you guys were lost. You took a left on a highway somewhere and ended up in Rochester. Close loss to Rowan, 94-90. Rochester kind of handled you guys a little bit more by 21. Got back on the winning stretch with Sewanee with your first win of the season. You headed out to Missouri and got wins against Westminster and Webster, and you kept rolling along. Averett, Barry, a really big win over a good W&L team in overtime, a win over Warren Wilson, a win over Greensboro. Then you took the break for the holidays. You went to Emory to play, and George Fox and Mary Washington said, well, here's your Christmas gifts. It's a bunch of coal. You got 2 losses there, and unfortunately it rolled into the Belhaven game. So, it's a loss of 2 here and a loss of 3 there with some really good basketball in between. How tough is it to get out of the funks, which you did with 3 wins now, and focus on getting back to winning?
Well, we've been doing it for 3 years. When you play 14 out of your first 16 games on the road, it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. But, for the last 3 years, we've challenged ourselves and played the very best at our level. And, dating back to last year, we played 8 teams that went to the NCAA tournament, 4 which got to the Sweet 16, and 1 that was a national runner-up. And we actually beat 4 of those. And we still didn't make the NCAA tournament, but that's a question and answers for other day. But it's part of it. Rowan game was a toss-up game. We laid an egg the next day against Rochester, who's 2-1 or 3-1 in their league. They've beat Emory, and they've beat someone else who's pretty good in that UAA league. So it wasn't like it's a bad loss. And then we went to Emory and played a really good George Fox team, who's probably having their best season in program history. They have a really good squad. And we're up 10 with 6 minutes to go against Mary Wash and went to the NCAA tournament and couldn't close the deal and lost in overtime. So, we're learning a lot about our ball club. The good thing is that we're resilient. We had a really good week. We beat Berea at home, went to Huntington and set a program record for a conference road game. We scored 108 or 9 points, I think, on the road. And then we beat LaGrange, who's always a very formidable opponent in our league, on Saturday. So, you're going to have your highs and lows in a season. You just got to stay steady and stay the course and continue to plug away.
Continue to plug away is definitely key. Unfortunately, we mentioned George Fox coming in out of the last segment. Unfortunately, hit a bit of a bump themselves recently, so has Mary Washington. But you're right. You're playing good teams, and you're challenging yourselves, and you get good wins. The Berea win is huge coming off the Belhaven loss because it keeps you at the top of that conference and makes that thing stay interesting along the way. You'll have Warren Wilson coming up, we should point out again, in non-conference play, then back into conference play against Belhaven, Piedmont, Covenant, all at home. So you've got a chance here to keep this win streak going along by getting the job done at Bear Gymnasium.
Yes, and we've been so far so good, unblemished at home so far. But it's two really good teams. Belhaven, I think, is as talented as anyone. Great size, great blend of juniors and seniors too, which is really important at our level. And then you got a great team at Piedmont coming in with a good coach and probably one of the top players in the country. I think he just made the Bevo Francis top 100 and Ryan Jolly. So it's always conference play, as you well know. It doesn't really matter what your record is, especially for us. We've been at the top of our league for decades. Whatever league we've been in 4 leagues now in the last 40 years. So we're always the hunted. But it feels great. I'd rather be in that position than having to do the hunting. So we embrace the pressure of always being at the top of our league and being chosen preseason number 1.
You should point out 6 of the final 9 of your games will be played at home, so you've got that advantage. 3 of the last 5 are on the road, so you've got this chunk. Yes, the last 5 will only feature 2 home games, but a huge advantage here. Granted, you got to play Berea on the road in the penultimate game, but again, we mentioned Belhaven's coming up, so you got a chance to kind of make things up. Let's talk about this team a little bit, if you don't mind. It's kind of a mix of a lot of experience with a lot of youth. You've got 1 senior, a whole host of juniors, and then a lot of sophomores and freshmen. A bit of a balancing act this year?
Yeah, we lost a couple of players that were experienced guys that had a lot of promise to start the year, and that's part of the attrition of Division III. And you have to be ready for those curveballs. You got to be kind of like, if you're going to be like Serrano and can't hit the curveball in Major League, you're going to be in trouble. So you got to be ready to hit that curveball, man. And we've been able to figure it out. We got 1 senior in our point guard who's extremely steady, Darryl Rice. He's probably top 10 in the country. At one point, he was top 5 in assist to turnover ratio across the board in Division III. Got a very talented Division II transfer in Reed Kemp, who's leading us in scoring right now. Has had some big games at 39 at Berry and 34 at Belhaven. Chase Morgan, who was the 6th man of the year for us, the 2nd leading scorer at 31 and 10 on. Jackson Garner, who's probably one of the premier shooters in the country, that plays the 2 for us, averaging double figures as well. And I got, more than likely, I hope, the 6th man of the year this year, and RJ Simmons, who was just voted player of the week, and it comes off the bench for us, averaged 20 and 8 for the week. So that's quite the luxury. And then we got some really talented freshmen, Keith Williams, Kobe Franklin. I can go on and on. Our point guard off the bench, Javi Roselle, sophomore Jalen Green. I can go on and on. We're just really young. You said experience, but the experienced guys that came back were all freshmen last year. So, man, the recipe, as you well know, is if you can stay together. We went to Hampton Sydney team was ranked number 1 in the country. We went down there 2 years ago and beat them at their place. And the secret to their success this year is they kept all 7 guys from that team. And that's why they're at. And obviously talented coach and Caleb, great players. But it's these senior leading teams in our level that typically make those runs in the NCAA tournament. And that's what we're trying to do. Can we keep this core group together so we can make a push hopefully next year and beyond?
I believe there's a sign in their locker room says Maryville never again. Just a rumor I've heard. I'm not sure.
Hey, he's crazy enough. The good thing about him, he's just like me. We don't shy away from playing good people. The nice guy, not only is he giving me money to come to his, but we're coming back to his place next year for a tournament. Nice. So we look forward to that.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling there's going to be some high expectations there as well. Granted, the coach you know well because he was in the USA South at one point. Yep. Let me talk about the individuals for your team. You've got essentially 6 guys scoring 9 points or more a game. I'll take that back. It's 5 because one of them has been injured. But essentially, you've got weapons. Reed Kemp, 18 points a game. 13 points for Chase Morgan. Jackson Garner's getting you 11.5. RJ Simmons, 9+. Darrell Rice, 9+. Almost all of them are pulling down rebounds. Almost all of them shoot well from the floor. And what's really jumps out to me, only one of them shoots less than 70% from the free throw line. So you're going to pick your poison a little bit from these guys. Maybe they don't all shoot from deep, fine, but you're going to foul them and set them in the line. They're likely going to make their shots there too.
Yeah, I think with the style of play that we play, I think we're top 10 in the country in free throws attempts a game, and I know we're top 10 in free throws makes a game. We came off another weekend of shooting close to 60 free throws for the weekend. We have the luxury of being able to throw the ball inside. Chase Morgan obviously being our lead guy, but I bring in a kid in Keith Williams who's 6'9", 280 on the block, who's a freshman who's going to be really good once he continues to figure this out and get better. So we have a good blend of inside out. We're scoring close to 84, 85 points a game, I believe. And one thing that's a difference for us, we're a different team where we play multiple defenses. Our zone right now in Division 1, 2, and 3 is number 1 in the country in points per possession. So it gives us a really good chance to win on every given night. And, we'll continue to work at it and hopefully keep teams unbalanced on the offensive end.
By the way, top number 5 in Division 3 as of tonight in both, as you said, attempts and makes in free throw, and the top quarter of Division 3, actually better than that. Top 100 in Division 3 in percentage. And if people are like, well, what's top? Well, remember, it's out of 420 some odd programs, so it's not too shabby to be at that point. You're also willing to go deep in the bench, Ro. You've got a lot of guys who see a lot of action, even if it's 5-6 minutes here to fill holes. You're willing to go deep. You've got the talent to do so. And then that youth, that younger group is getting all that experience on top of that. That's going to help you down the road.
Absolutely. We always thought that our strength is in our numbers. It's just a matter of waiting your turn. Sometimes young players are somewhat impatient. We'll say sometimes their parents are maybe more impatient than they are. But that's part of the culture that we're coaching in right now. But in due time, if you wait your turn, you're a good teammate. You compete like crazy in practice and you prepare every day. Once the opportunity comes your way, all you have to do is produce. And when that moment comes, as a coach, that's what makes it so fulfilling for me is when that moment, that aha moment, and the lights turn on. Because we've traditionally played 9 to 10 guys, since the time of Coach Lambert. Coach coached here for 40 years, and that's kind of how we did it. When I played here, we were 10 deep when we went to the Sweet 16, and I think it helps you. In a long season, you need more than just 5 or 6 guys to lead the way. And, we're happy to have that depth within our team.
Touchy subject, I know, but you guys are in this second year of this conference, which means you don't have the AQ. And I think when this conference was formed,
I was having a good night, and now
I know I left it till later. I tried to grease the wheels as much as I could.
I got you.
I think when this conference was formed, everyone was on the impression, heck, I was, that you'd have access to Pool B. It's all a numbers game. The access ratio, 9 point whatever to 1. You've got 8 teams in the CCS. Everybody else belongs to a conference. So they're not in Pool B with you. We don't have stragglers. Like if Bob Jones had stuck around, maybe we get that 9th and it pushes it over, maybe not. I know. Literally it's that game, right? How hard is it to go through this season knowing you're going to play for a conference title? Certainly the conference will battle it up for a trophy. but knowing the likelihood of getting in the NCAA tournament is probably more difficult than for anybody else out there, because you don't have the AQ access, and because of the scheduling that you have to do, 2 games against Warren Wilson, for example, your resume, we'll find out officially down the road, is going to be tough. How hard is that to keep everyone motivated when you just don't know if the avenue's there to play in March?
Dave, it's a guessing game. Last year we played top 5 schedule in the country. We won the last 10 games of the year. I won the regular season championship, conference tournament championship. Like I said, I played 8 NCAA tournament teams. We beat a 1 overall seed, which was Rowan, in the regular season, and beat 3 other NCAA tournament teams, 8 in total. It still wasn't enough because we play, in my opinion, one of the top regions in Division 3. It's not the top, it's top 3 in Region 6, right? We've had the back-to-back national champs. And this year we have the #1 team in the country, and probably 4 or 5 of them are ranked in the top 25. So arguably, it's one of the toughest regions in the country. I've done it every way, right? 2 years ago, we were 18-1 with 10 games to go. We dropped a couple, had some injuries. We finished 20-4, a 20-4 team that doesn't make the NCAA tournament. Tough pill to swallow when you won the regular season title, and we're, D3 hoops, we're a top 10 team in the country 2 years ago. And now, same thing this year. I scheduled Rowan, tough team. Rochester, typically a tough team. Washington and Lee, who we beat, really good team. Belhaven is having a good year. We thought Barry was going to be better from a record standpoint. I talked to Mick, at the start of in the summer, and I said, Mick, what you're about to do, we just did it. It is so hard. Barry's not a 3-9 team, but that's what their records show, because they
I agree.
played 7 unbelievable programs. So sometimes it's a guessing game. Sometimes you get it right. Sometimes you don't. Even when you get it right, it's so difficult.
Well, and this year, these last 2 years, you're more on that razor edge than anybody else. You don't have the wiggle room that you can afford yourself, and not even yourself, just the dumb luck of a ball bouncing in a particular way. You're right. Barry's better than a 3-9 team. I went back and looked at last year, like, where was the hiccup? And I'm saying that as tongue in cheek.
No, the hiccup.
But you lose.
Was,
but look at you lost 5 in a row. But they're Mount Union, Keene State, Wabash, Emory, and Barry. You then lost to Randolph-Macon, LaGrange, and Piedmont. If anything, there's one game there that I go, well, maybe they shouldn't have won that. But again, it's razor edge. So you guys are in this really tough, awkward situation. How do you keep everyone motivated?
We just worry one game at a time. You know what it really takes a toll on? Probably my wife and my daughter, because every game is the Super Bowl for me, and we take it very serious. And that's the pressure of the last 2 seasons. It really takes more of a toll on me, because I know each game could be the difference of us getting into the tournament or not. And when you don't have the AQ, it's a different style of coaching, right? You're at the end of the day, it's a loss, but we still got the AQ. But I'm telling you, my kids have been extremely resilient. We're trying every day that we only concern ourselves with the things we can control. What we can control is game in and game out. What happens in Region 6 will be determined here in the next 6 weeks. And we have no control over that. All we can do is, hey, can we be 22-5? And then we're up for conversation. Last year, our guys know we win at home against Emory and Barry. Emory is out. We're in. And look how hard it is. Guilford, to me, last year was a tragedy. They should have been in the NCAA tournament. That's how hard it is. Because there were 4 teams ahead of us that were having unbelievable seasons.
Well, and on top of that, we also had a wacky year. We should point this one out for anybody who's new. We had a wacky year. We had a ton of upsets.
Yeah.
So that by the time we were getting to the last picks, those teams are normally, pick 6, 7 spots prior, because we have so many AQs eaten up. Yeah. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but I do want to ask, do you feel any sense of relief that coming next year, you now get back, and the rest of the conference get back into the AQ game with the AQ for the conference? Does it provide you any sense that at least maybe this summer you can enjoy it a little more?
Well, yeah, and you don't have to. We're still going to challenge ourselves and play the best teams in the country, right? Next year, we're going to Marietta, Mary Wash, and La Crosse. We're going to Virginia Wesleyan, V Wesleyan, NC Wesleyan, and Oshkosh. We're always going to challenge ourselves in non-conference, but do we have to challenge ourselves as much as I've done these past 2 years? Probably not. The travel is hard on Division III athletes. We're talking 7, 8, 9 hours in a bus for 3 to 4 days and mount that to your academic rigors, it makes it really hard. But we have gotten really good. We've gotten way better as a program because of these challenges. We've seen every team in the country, the best of the best. We know what it looks like. So it's been really good for us. I would not take it back. Again, like you hear from other coaches, pressure is a privilege. We're privileged that we can play this type of schedule, that we can challenge ourselves, and it's making us better as a program. But yes, relief for us. I'm happy for my colleagues because it makes the conference tournament even more exciting because if you're cutting down that net on that Saturday that you're one of the 64 teams in. And that's what, every player tries to play for, and that's the dream. I was able to accomplish it here for my 2 years when I transferred to Maryville. We went to the Sweet 16 and a round of 32 my senior year. So there's nothing better than cutting down that net and knowing that on Monday or Monday, the selection show comes up and we talk brackets and where people are going. And that's so much fun at our level. So, and I can't wait. Like I told our guys, what's delayed is not denied, right? So you just got to stay the course, my man. And that's all you can do. We control the controllables. And for us, it's practice tomorrow. And hopefully, God willing, Warren Wilson on Wednesday.
It's a lot easier to make the argument, too, that you need to travel somewhere for a game or somehow help someone get to you when your AD is the former chair of the committee and gets it and understands that dynamic. That certainly helps, too.
Yeah, and we've been fortunate that we have an administration that is very supportive of that. You could sometimes have administrations that don't want you traveling that much or, because it does. At the end of the day, it's money, and it costs a lot. But, I think that's part of our job at our level is to give these young, these young men and women the best experience possible. And like I talked on another podcast today, my senior has played in your tournament in Las Vegas. We've played in the one in Daytona Beach. I've been to Mount Union. I played in the Great Lakes at Wabash. We've gone all over. I went to Rochester this year. We've been to St. Louis.
I got to get the Hoopsville Classic back so you can go play at that too.
Yeah, so it's what a great experience for a young man that wants to come to our program. I feel very fortunate. I have a really good job. I get to do it at the place where I play. I'm just excited of where we're at right now as a program and where we'll continue to go, hopefully, from here as we continue to challenge ourselves with the schedule and the people that we play.
By the way, you were on another podcast. I thought you and I signed an exclusive deal to be on the show tonight. No, you're saying that fell through? Did you not get the check?
No, I just got a T-shirt, I think.
Well played. Well played, sir. Well done. On that note, I am going to let you go because that was perfect. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the insight and honesty and the forthrightness, too. That it's great for us to learn from that and appreciate someone else's perspective from it as well. So I appreciate the time and I appreciate the words. As always, though, we give the guest the final word. Any final words?
Man, as always, man, thank you for what you guys are doing. So much because of you, so many other avenues have been able to come out with the DataCast guys, Bob's QCast stuff. Man, it's lovely. It's great. It's beautiful for our guys and our level that they can get that feel for the game, that there's people out there that truly enjoy our level of play because it is a great level and there is great basketball and there are great coaches and players. And without you guys, a lot of these really good coaches and players wouldn't be highlighted. So just thank you so much for what you guys do, the tournaments you put on and everything you do for Division III basketball. I know from us and our staff and our institution, we're very thankful.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that very kindly. You take care of yourself. Good luck the rest of the season. Look forward to watching the rest of the conference action. And hopefully we're talking about you guys in March. If not, I know we got a really angry Maryville squad heading into next season.
Don't forget, man, what is delayed is not denied. So we're coming.
Perfect. Raul, take care of yourself. Great to chat with you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Raul Placeres joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Great chatting with him. Love that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Bob Quillman, Ryan Scott join us. We'll talk top 25, dubious, debatable, deep dive teams on what has turned into what we expected, an absolutely wacky season in the top 25. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3 Hoops. Back with more after this. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues, while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Football has taught me a lot throughout my life. It's definitely had a huge imprint on who I am as a person. Competing at a Division III level created that opportunity for me to go to college. Not only was I the first one in my family to graduate college, but I was really the first one to even go. Being the first one, I'm breaking that cycle, and now that I've graduated, I'm not sure what's the next step, but I know I have a lot of doors open. And a lot of those are open because I played football and ran track here at Otterbein.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all.
It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
If I lose, I'll respond with respect.
If I win, I'll back it up with humility.
If I
win, I'll back it up with humility.
If I fail, I'll rise up with honor. It's tough for us to put it all on the line.
Don't undo my hard work with poor sportsmanship.
Respect. It's the name of the game.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. We're in our final segment here. At the end of this, we will just wrap things up. We won't take another break. We'll just wrap things up at the end of the program. Quick note, we'll be on the air Thursday at 7 o'clock. Reminder, a bunch of Thursdays coming up. We're going to be on at 1 o'clock instead due to work that I have picked up on Thursday evenings. Division I schedules are a little bit different than Division III's. So just to keep in mind that this week on Thursday, we will be on at 7. I think the next 7 o'clock show will actually be the top 16 reveal on February 15th, right before I fly to Arizona. So a whole bunch coming up at 1 o'clock on Thursdays. Keeping with us on social media. We'll keep you up to date on that as well. And again, Marathon Show, we're trying to toy around with when we're going to do it. It's gotten a little bit complicated. All right, let's talk top 25. By the way, the women's new top 25 is out for D3Hoops.com. As I quickly hit refresh, not a huge amount of changes, to be honest. Emory fell a couple of spots to 10th. Scranton has fallen to 14th. Loris and Carroll are now into the top 25. Stout and Wash U are out. But on the men's side, it's a lot more redonkulous, to say the least. So joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, as they always do, and I appreciate their time, it is Bob Quillman and Ryan Scott. We actually, if I'm not mistaken, first time this season we've gotten the two of them together. Ryan has had schedule conflicts. Bob has schedule conflicts. So I think this is the first time we're getting the dapper duo here to get going with this top 25. And gentlemen, what a week to have you on, because it was a nasty week of results. Bob, I don't know about you, but I am not only confused about some of the results out there, I'm more confused about the CCIW, your home conference, than any.
Well, that's probably a whole different show. We could just do 30 minutes on the CCIW. I'm confused too. I know that the team I root for is all alone in first place right now. And so it is what it is. I didn't vote for a single CCIW team. Can't remember the last time I did that. So yeah, everything's great. I also need to give a shout out to my guy, Mike Rainiak. We are D3. I've been eating this guy alive on Twitter. Dave, I just thought I'd wear this in honor of him. I thought I'd bring a toothpick, maybe do some of the show with the toothpick.
Oh, Lord.
I love that guy. I apologize to Mike.
Sir, you are feeding that beast way too much.
Yeah, so shouts to Mike.
By the way, I just realized I didn't vote for a CCIW team on my ballot either this week. I didn't even dawn on me.
Either.
Yeah, we could get it. And none are in, right? So that the collective group really didn't. And I think there are some top 25 caliber CCIW teams, but I don't know that this week that any of them has really a resume to be voted for. So that's kind of probably where all of us were.
I removed 3 or 4 teams. All of them I consider as top 25 caliber. But as I said at the start of the show, there's a lot of top 25 caliber teams. And if you're going to go 0 for 2 or 3 losses out of 5 or 3 losses out of 4, I'm just going to pull you and put someone else in there until you can show you're playing better. Ryan, again, crazy week of results from top to bottom. The only ones that seemed unscathed were the top 3.
Yeah, well, and it does seem like there's a few teams at the top that are sort of starting to separate themselves. Although it doesn't seem like the voters agree on which 3 that is.
Yeah, by the way, I said that, and I realized that's my top 3, not the actual top 3.
Right. But the other thing that I was noticing going through, because I went back this week, I spent like 4 hours. I looked at every team with a winning record just to make sure that I wasn't leaving anybody out. I looked and evaluated everybody going down. And you realize how many teams, like at the bottom of my ballot, if you go and look at Twitter, like 8 out of the last 10 teams are teams that like have been playing really terribly the last 2 weeks, but had amassed enough wins at the beginning of the year to put a resume out there that's still looking pretty good. And so I didn't want to I'll drop them eventually if they keep losing, but like, you don't want to drop a team like Tufts just because they've had, 3 or 4 losses, the only 3 or 4 losses of the year, right?
Ironically, I did. I got into that debate with myself. I thought, okay, listen, Tufts took a couple losses. I know they're a really good team. But when I dove in further, I went, hold on. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They've lost to Hamilton. They've lost to Amherst. The only one they haven't lost is an out-of-conference game against Emmanuel. You know what? I got other teams I'm voting for right now. Let's see if Tufts can right the ship. So I actually did pull the trigger on them, but it felt weird.
I've done that with a lot of teams this year where like 1 week I feel really good, and the next week things have changed so dramatically with teams I want to put in, and maybe that team has played bad. And I have had wholesale changes every week on my ballot, and probably going to keep happening.
Yeah, absolutely agree. All right, let's start with it. First off, Hampden-Sydney secured its number 1 even tighter. They now have 23 of the 25 top votes. Trinity, Connecticut has 2. One of them has outed himself on the old Twitter sphere. It is the guy in the middle of your screen. It is Ryan Scott.
Yeah.
I don't know who the second one is. Maybe they've outed themselves. I don't know. I don't need to dive into it. But everybody else, and it's crazy because Case Western Reserve is number 2 now, but they came up from 5th. John Carroll's number 3 now. They came up from 8th. Oswego's down up from 10 to 6. Trine's up from 11, but then Guilford's down. NYU, I want to talk about NYU later. We'll get to that later. Whitewater falling from 9 all the way to 18. Elmer's out from 15. Dubuque out from 18. Virginia Wesleyan out from 20. Redlands out from 24. Co sitting out as well in the 26th slot, if you want to call it that. All right, let's just dive in because we'll talk about a lot of these teams, I have a feeling. And if we don't, I'll bring them up quickly at the end for your thoughts. We'll go in left to right just to get things rolling here. We're going to start with Debatable. So this is a team that just want to debate. Do you want to debate their location? Do you want to debate if they're too high, too low, whatever? It's a free-for-all kind of, what do you want to talk about? Bob, we'll start with you. Who's your Debatable?
I'm going to go with a grouping here. My Debatable is a grouping, and that's going to be the ARC conference. My debate is, what is the correct order of the ARC? I voted for 3 teams, and literally because a kid made a buzzer beater for Nebraska Wesleyan, it's Co. That was enough to put Nebraska Wesleyan in and Co out. So here's my debate. This is crazy. Dubuque's 5-2 in the league, 13-2 overall. They have a win in the league against Nebraska Wesleyan. Loras is 5-1 in the league, 13-1. They have a win at Nebraska Wesleyan. Nebraska Wesleyan is 5-2 in the league. They won at Co. Co is 6-1 in the league. They have wins against Loras and Dubuque at home, but they lost at home to Nebraska Wesleyan. I don't care what model you use. There is no way to figure out the right order of those 3. I voted for 3 of them. I put Dubuque, Loras, and Nebraska Wesleyan in, with Co being just a smidge out of my top 25. I like Dubuque's non-conference wins at Whitworth. I think that's a good win, and at St. Norbert especially. So again, I don't know, Ryan, you've probably looked at the ARC. I can't remember if you've got any of those in or out, or if it's like so mishmashed that you don't have any of them in, because the poll has none of the ARC in. And I suspect it's because there's 4 options, and it's like they're all splitting votes basically.
So, well, we're going to mess up the order, Dave, because this was my dubious pick, was to talk about the whole ARC. So this was
that's awesome.
I know Bob has been giving people a little bit of crap on Twitter for not voting for them. I'm going to bring them up just because we got good teams here, right? You could look at it, you could watch them. They're playing good basketball. There are not resumes here that I can rank in the top 25. Like you mentioned, Whitworth and St. Norbert that Dubuque has beaten. Those are the 2 best non-conference wins in the entire conference, right?
True.
We've got like a home win to Stout that Loras put up there. Nebraska Wesleyan went to Oshkosh and won. Central, who we haven't even talked about, if I'm doing the eye test, I still think that's the most talented team in the conference. They've just been throwing games away the last minute. It's got to be incredibly frustrating for them. But like they're all losing to each other. It's good, and I think the team coming out of there is going to be a tough out, but they're not.
Well,
they don't really have resumes that are competitive nationally.
Like,
right?
I look at it this way: they're all. It's not like they all have a bunch of losses. So Dubuque 13-2, Loras 13-1, Nebraska Wesleyan 14-2, Co 14. Here's my question for you: you're one of the Trinity, Connecticut #1 voters.
Yeah,
their schedule is god awful. It's terrible. So it's not any worse, right? These schedules these guys are playing are better than Trinity, Connecticut. You've got them #1.
So.
I think I got you on that one.
I don't think they're that far apart. If you look, I was looking up today. Dubuque's like in the 200s for schedule, right? Like they're not like that much better than them. And there are the losses, right? I wouldn't have Trinity #1 if they had lost one of those games. They're destroying teams. That's why they're up there.
I don't have them 1 either.
You know,
I have like 18-25, like these 3 teams. But this is the problem. This is the season. This is what this is it, right? This is the kind of year we're in. Who the hell knows?
And this is the valid part of this is there is reason to put them there because of the eye test, right? You can look at these teams and see that they are good. I'm just saying I'm a little dubious that any of the resumes are quite up there because they've only got 1 or 2 losses, but they're all to each other. And they don't really have signature wins out there.
I'm with you. I'm I'll put a dubious on me. I'm dubious. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was watching those games, and like I'm sitting there watching Co and Nebraska Wesleyan. I had just watched Dubuque, and I had watched Loras like last week, and I'm sitting there saying like, on a neutral court, like would Illinois Wesleyan beat those teams? Maybe, probably. I don't know. Like, I'm not voting for them, or I didn't vote for Whitewater. I didn't vote for Tufts. So yeah, I mean, Ryan, I'm with you. I have no problem with anything you're saying. And that's just the kind of season we're in. It's like, we're just, I'm going by eye test. I think those are all good teams with really good players, but I got no problem with that being dubious.
And that's the other thing is I went and I ranked 75 teams doing my ballot yesterday.
Whoa.
And I think, and those are 75 teams that I would think.
Hold on, Ryan. We're voting for 25. Did you not get a memo?
Thorough, man.
This was my mid-season, like total reset, going back to the beginning, see where we are halfway through. But like, so to answer your question, I did have Loris as the highest one amongst the ARC. I felt like their resume was the best at this point. That's where I came down on it. But yeah, they're close. But the thing is I think the team I picked 75th was like Washington and Lee. And you wouldn't be surprised if they beat Hampton-Sydney the next time they play, right? Like that's the season we're in right here.
That's the whole season we're in. I could take 5 teams I didn't vote for. And if you put them in a neutral court tomorrow against Hampton-Sydney, my number one, I might favor Hampton-Sydney by a basket, literally a basket. Like Whitewater and Hampton-Sydney, we just make play tomorrow. Illinois Wesleyan and Hampton-Sydney, and Illinois Wesleyan shoots it pretty well that night. Like there are tons of teams that are just like this. The voting in the top 25 this year is almost crazy, but it's great. It's fun, but it's tough.
The irony of all this, I voted for one ARC team. I voted for Co. And the only reason I eventually got to that was because unlike Dubuque, they didn't go 0 for 2. They beat Dubuque. Yeah, they lost to Nebraska Wesleyan. So I removed Dubuque, who I had ahead of Co. I left Co in, but I dropped them. They're down at 23rd. It's not like I gave them that much love. I was going down that same rabbit hole. And eventually I went, hold on. Co at least beat Dubuque. I'm going to give them a little bit of that. But I could have easily 5 minutes later, if I hadn't hit submit, gone, nope, out.
I didn't like the Co lost at home. I'm big into like, you got to protect
absolutely valid point.
That was my reason. I'm not saying that was the best reason because Co is sitting there tied for first. Right, 6-1. But hey, look, just give me credit. I picked a good debatable because you
did,
well.
And I even threw up the dubious there for a moment when Ryan dove in and said it was his dubious. So we threw up the dubious line there for a moment. We'll stick with debatable though, Ryan. I'm fascinated. Who's yours?
So I wanted to talk, and this is genuinely debatable here because I have no clue. Wash U is the one I want to talk about. I put Wash U in at 12. I think partly because, not intentionally because of the reputation, but partly I think because of that, because at some point when these teams are all so even, you have to make a differentiation somehow. But even as I look at that, they don't have like a super signature win. They've got good wins, but not anyone that's stands out amongst, some of the best. And the losses are sort of middling losses, right? They got walloped by Illinois Wesleyan. And it's not bad, but it's not the kind of team you want to be losing to if you're into the top 12, right? Like that's.
But there's been a lot of teams who've gotten walloped this year that are really good teams. It's been weird.
Right. But just looking at a resume, not a huge, super great win. And the losses are not, they're not losing to the top 10 teams in the country. I just don't know what to make of them because we know they're good. We know they're talented. We know they're well coached. They did great this weekend. What do you think, Bob?
It's funny that the game that I actually started believing in Wash U was a game they lost. It was the Chicago game. And they lost a really tough game. But I was watching Wash U play, and I'm like, these guys are freaking good. Like, they have every piece you need on a good team. Now, I'm with you, Ryan. Like, resume. And look, of course, I watched the Illinois Wesleyan at Wash U game, and it seems like D3 Nation has pretended that was just a game that never happened, like it was an exhibition. It wasn't close ever. And Illinois Wesleyan physically, athletically manhandled Wash U. And it's like that's just put off the side, like, let's not talk about that game. So that game's in my head, but I think they have played very well. And when I look at their talent level with the big kid Capral in the middle, who's not great, but he's a load in terms of physical, they have great guard play. And this kid, Drake Kinsvater, is an athletic freak that does it all. To me, Wash U is very much a top 15 team. But I have no question, Ryan, with you questioning that because, yeah, the resume kind of is like blah.
I have Wash U 10, and they're right in that slot where, okay, hold on, that feels too high. Let me move them down. Hold on, I'm not putting this team above them. Wait, I'm not putting this team above them. Hold on, that's not going to happen either. Oh, let me put them back up. You know what? I'm going to move this other team back. They're too high. Hold on, I'm not putting Wash U 9. They're literally in that section of my ballot now where I'm comfortable with, a handful of teams at the top, and I don't know what to make and where to slot teams specifically because this team feels really good here, and then I start looking at others, and I don't want to matriculate them higher, and I don't want to take teams that are below them and put them above, but it doesn't feel like it's no man's land. It's absolute no man's land. And so they've floated to 10.
The issue here is that, like, I have Wash U 13 this week. There is no difference in my voting world between 13 and like 30. There literally isn't. Again, I mentioned that I didn't vote for Whitewater. Wash U versus Whitewater tomorrow on a neutral court. Flip a coin. There is no difference between 10 and like 25 or 30. They're just, I know we've maybe said that in the past jokingly, but this year it's really, really, really true.
Well, we've joked about throwing a dart on the wall, and that was like 3-4 years ago. Nowadays, I'm like, God, I wish I had that. I don't have enough darts.
It is unbelievable. And so to me, the debate is like, whether you want to debate that, like, hey, I've got Wash U out of my ballot, or I have Wash U 10, either of those is acceptable. That's just, it's kind of like the ARC debate we just had. Like that, it is what it is.
It's so interesting. Like, I think back a couple of years ago when Randolph Macon won the whole thing, going into the tournament, we didn't have 50 teams we thought were even, but we probably had 12 or 15 that we thought could come out of there. And Randolph Macon was one of them, obviously. But like over the course of those 3 weeks, something clicked and they just crushed everybody every round all the way through. And at some point this year, right, some of these teams are going to click together and they're going to show up. But, it could be after the last regular season poll, right? Before we even know, which team, some team we're not even talking about right now might win this thing.
It could be a team that we are not even talking about in the top 15 or 20 that is the team you're talking about. It would not be crazy if I'm looking at my ballot, number 23, Johns Hopkins. Would it be crazy if they just started beating the crap out of people and started rolling through the tournament?
Wouldn't be a surprise at all.
Crazy. We're not, they're 23 on my ballot. So, or you pick one of the Claremont Mud Scripts. I voted for them this week. I brought them back from the dead. They're pretty good. So it's where we are.
Men's soccer had Washington Lee as a non-top 25 make the Final Four. It's not because teams rolled up in front of them. Maybe you could argue one, but they played well enough to get all the way there and nearly got to the title game. I would not be surprised if we have an absolutely wide open Final Four because you just have, it's a matchup day. It's a hot shooting day. It's this or it's that. It's an oddball moment and you just have complete chaos. And that's going to make it fun. As we've said already, it's going to make it fun. All right, Ryan, you said you used your Dubious, but you also said you came prepared. So I'm curious, do you have another Dubious?
I
can
have
pass
some teams
if you
that
want.
I don't feel right calling it dubious, right? Like, because I think, like you said, there's so many teams that are so close together. So the second one on my list was Trine, which I feel like we're picking nits here, right? Like, what did they finish this week? 7th? And I maybe had them 12th or 13th.
I've got them 11, so I'm in the same boat you are.
Which I feel like is a little high, but like that's one of those that, with the difference between 3 and 13, is that something even worth talking about?
I have tried 3. This is great. This is great. Yeah, I've tried 3.
Wow.
I like the fact that I like their win over Platteville. So Platteville goes and absolutely paced Calvin. And the very next day, Trine handily beats Platteville. And I think I have Platteville 4. So this is all about where you see the other team, right? Like I have Platteville, one of the best teams in the country. So they beat Platteville. I have Platteville 4 and Trine 3. I think Trine's really good. But again, tomorrow, neutral court, Trine versus Co. I don't know who wins that game. I didn't vote for Co. I've Trine 3. So is there any difference between 3 and 26? Don't know.
That's what I mean is I can bring up a name like that, but the difference between 3 and 13 is basically nothing, like.
Well, the crazy thing is I had Platteville last week 19. They are now up to 13. So I have Trine at 11. So yeah, again, it's as you said, Bob, it's about where you're already seeing other teams. So you have a win over Trine over Platteville, who you have in a really high spot. I have a Trine beating Platteville, who I think is good, but I don't have them as high, so I don't push Trine as high.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
and then his teams lose. So like Trine lost at Elmhurst, and for a while I had Elmhurst like number 5, but now Elmhurst I'm not even voting for anymore.
Right.
So now do I have to double back and say to myself, the loss at Elmhurst was kind of not great, or I don't know. It's just death spiral there.
That's the thing for me with WashU, right? They started out the year Swarthmore, Johns Hopkins, Babson as their first 3 games. Well, when you do that, they're like the best team in the country. But you come back in January and you look at Swarthmore, Johns Hopkins, especially the way Hopkins was playing then, and Babson now, you're like, well, they're not bad, but that's a very middling sort of resume for a top 25 team.
I'm surprised Swarthmore is still on our sheets. All right, no, it's a good point. Bob, who's your dubious?
Yeah, so this is like Ryan and I seem to have like the polar opposite ballots, which makes this the perfect pairing this week. So my dubious is Tufts. So Tufts is in the poll. Like where did they land here? They landed at 24. I did not vote for Tufts. Let me preface this by saying I almost voted for them number 1 about 2 ballots ago, the week after the Keene State game. Did I vote for them number 1? Maybe I did. Oh, you did?
I think I was the only one.
I think I was number 2. So do I think Tufts is outstanding? Of course I do. But guys, let's pull up the NESCAC standings.
That's going to hurt you.
They're 0 and freaking 3 in the NESCAC, guys.
Down.
Lost 3 of their last 4.
No, in the last 3 weeks, they have lost 4 games. I, in person, saw Cal Lutheran, and I believe they're outstanding. So a 4-point loss at Cal Lutheran, great, no problem. Lost to Connecticut College at home. They lost at Amherst. Amherst isn't any good. And they lost at Hamilton. Connecticut College, Amherst, and Hamilton. Lost. 0-3 the NESCAC. They're down to 32 in Massey. Their wins, WPI.
And Clark, that's not as strong as it looked before.
Clark, St. Joe, Connecticut, and of course, Keene State. For me, I'm not as big on Clark as a lot of people. For me, Keene State, amazing win. Cal Lutheran, tough loss. But I don't see right now a great case for Tufts. But this is where, like Ryan said, I'm kind of like soft on my dubious because Tufts might be better than half the teams I'm voting for. I don't freaking know. That's my dubious.
I pulled them from 11 to out of my poll.
So I'm the one. I voted for them number 1 after the Keene State game. I didn't feel like I watched all 40 minutes of that game. I didn't feel like, did that one go to overtime? It was just 40 minutes, right? Because they won at the end. Yeah.
Exactly.
I felt like that was the best team in the country coming out of there. But then I don't know if it's the next game or the second game after was the Cal Lu game, which I also watched all 40 minutes of. And it was very clear they were just a different team, whatever that layoff was. And that happens, right? When we get the holiday break, for whatever reason, they just didn't have it. And they clearly don't have it right now. But for a team that we know is good enough and was playing for the first third of the season as the best team in the country, I'm not quite ready to just throw them out the window yet. But like I've got them at 20. So they went from 1 to 20 in 2 weeks. It's a crazy thing.
I have no problem with anyone that has Tufts in. I personally didn't have him in, but that's another great example of like, what do you do with the team that had some great wins early and all of a sudden they're losing? It's tough. It's hard to figure out what to do.
3 polls ago, I had Tufts 6 on my ballot, and now they're off. It's just that kind of season, and if you get into a wrong end of a wrong week, you're going to get maybe dropped or seriously lowered, while others get floated in. And we got a lot of good teams. All right, so that's 2 good sets on that. We got deep dive now. Bob will let you lead off on your deep dive, which I think we've already been deep diving, but let's dive a little deeper.
And I can't believe this team qualifies for a deep dive. Like it's almost like a scam that I'm using this program.
Are you putting up Illinois Wesleyan?
No, Rochester. So Rochester's my deep dive. And here's the thing. So I want to make an important reminder to people is that some teams come into the year having returned all of their guys or most of their nucleus, and then other teams are forming a new nucleus as the season goes on. Rochester was in the latter camp, right? They lost most of their guys, and they were working through a new rotation. So, they lost to Worcester, they lost at St. John Fisher, Hobart, Ithaca, and then they got pasted by Johns Hopkins just a couple weeks ago. But if you look at how they're playing in the UAA right now, they beat Emory at home, and Emory's a really good team. I think they're another top 25 20. They beat Emory. Rochester won at Chicago, and Chicago beat WashU, and then they lost in overtime at WashU. So they're just a deep dive for me in terms of like, keep an eye on them. It wouldn't be crazy to think they could beat Carnegie Mellon and Case Western Reserve at home this weekend. That wouldn't be crazy. And so keep an eye on Rochester. Again, they're too good a program to really be a deep dive, but based on the season, I guess they qualify.
I saw them at Hopkins. If they beat Case, I'll be blown away. Because, and Hopkins was good. I'm not voting for him just yet. I know they're rolling, and I'm taking note. I can't wait. I'm going to see him at the end of the month up at Gettysburg. That's going to be a great game. I'm not voting for Gettysburg either. I'm voting for none of the Centennial. But Rochester scored 2 points in about 7.5 minutes. They both came on free throws. I did not think of them as that great a team. And
I'm not saying great either.
If they were to beat the Spartans, I kid you not, I'd be stunned.
But you would have said the same thing about Case losing to Carnegie Mellon.
No, see, that one, I'll go on words that Todd McGinnis told me as we were chatting in Vegas. He's like, you know what? The team worries me right now is Carnegie Mellon. That they're going to knock us off in this game coming up.
Well, what about Brandeis? Case could have lost yesterday to Brandeis.
Yeah, that one.
So,
I agree with you. I just having seen Rochester in person.
But this UAA thing, and then we'll give Ryan his time on this deep dive. But the UAA teams, to me, the top 7. I'm going to call Chicago number 8 by a smidgen right now. I think those top 7. I don't see any separation that's huge, and so like I guess maybe I'm throwing out another debatable, which we don't have time to get into. But like Case, WashU, Carnegie, Rochester, NYU, Brandeis, Emory, Chicago. If you look at who's beaten who, I mean, is Case this top 5 great team, or are they like smashed in the middle of the pack and everyone's about 15 or 17? I could argue the latter, because look at how the games have played out. These UAA teams seem all even to me.
That's a valid point. I agree with you. I'm actually more stunned that Chicago lost that game, since it was a home game against Rochester, than anything. So listen, Rochester perplexed me, trust me, because what I saw wasn't pretty. And they weren't horrible.
Sure,
let me rephrase that. It wasn't pretty by the standard I've gotten used to for Rochester. They're going to go beat my alma mater. They're going to go beat really good teams. They're a good team. It's just what I'm used to. I should preface that, or should have prefaced that.
And I think the other part of that with Rochester, and all credit to Luke and the staff and the guys who've been working hard, every team in that conference got better from last year, except Rochester. Like they lost almost everybody.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Good
the
point.
results they're getting are pretty impressive. And you're right. Like in this, I mean, with the schedule they put together, if they finish fourth, especially in the region they're in, do they get on a rank? You know, like it's not going to take that many wins to get in there at fourth because they're all going to be beating up on each other. You know, two or three that we don't expect, and Rochester's right in the mix there.
That's a good point.
And we're going to be talking about their giant SOS and their tiny winning percentage all over again.
That race,
640, baby.
That race has turned the corner. Like at one point, I thought it wasn't going to be much of a conference race, and it's become a very exciting one very quickly. I can't wait to watch that one play itself out. Good choice. No, that's a good one. It's got me certainly scratching my head. Ryan, who's your dive in deep one?
So it's probably not surprising to anybody that I'm going to pull this one up. I voted for him the last 2 weeks, and my spots at the bottom. I wasn't able to quite make it on there as I reevaluated everything for the year, but I really want everyone to take a look at Farmingdale out of the Skyline. This is a really good basketball team. Obviously, the schedule they put together is never going to be a world beater. They took the loss to Ramapo, which looks better and better as Ramapo has been playing really well. But this is a team that took Christopher Newport right down to the wire last year. They didn't lose much. They lost, I think, one starter and their 6-man. But that was not like a fluke game, right? They out-rebounded Christopher Newport in that game. They had fewer turnovers. I think they only had 7 against that team that won the national title. This year, they're third in the country in three-point percentage. They're third in rebound margin. They're in the top 15 in a couple other categories. They've got 4 guys. I think it's 1 junior and 3 seniors, but 4 upperclassmen. 2 of those guys played together in high school. Like they know each other really well. They're super physical. They're tough. They're smart. Good ball handlers. Like I'm not saying they're going to win the national title here, but again, like I said last year when they drew Christopher Newport in the first round, you don't want to see those guys in March. And I had them at 31 on my giant list this time. I couldn't quite get them in there, but it's a really strong team, and I hope they're going to get a chance to prove it like they did last year.
For me, I struggle with the teams with weak SOSs, and just not that it's the perfect SOS measure, but nothing is. But their Massey SOS is 344. And to me, I look at we talked about the ARC teams earlier. The ARC teams' resumes are way, way, way better than Farmingdale. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to hang my hat on. And a lot of times I'll say it this way is if Farmingdale State had played Hampton-Sydney's schedule, would you throw them out there as a deep dive, or would they have 9 losses right now? I lean to
they'd have 9.
They might have 6 losses
6,
though.
I'd say 6, probably 5.
So 6, but you wouldn't be putting them out here for a deep. I'm being a smart ass. I'm not trying to be a jackass.
If Farmingdale State played Hampton-Sydney's schedule and had 6 losses right now, somebody would be talking about them as a sleeper.
We'd probably be talking about it in some other category. And but
so
I'm just saying, like, I struggle with Farmingdale as a legitimate candidate, and I know this is just the deep dive, but that's why I haven't voted for Farmingdale, is just because I don't have anything to hang my head on.
I'm not going to compare these two teams, only the situation that they're in, right? So for me, one of those is this is a team that I knew from last year was good and proved that they were good and didn't lose a whole lot.
Sure.
So I'm going to start out having a pretty high opinion of them. And in that case, all they can do is prove me wrong, right? Like I know that the schedule can never prove it right. They can never justify my perception of them based on the schedule they're running this year. But I'm going to keep, my perspective pretty high until they show me otherwise. And again, not comparing these two teams, but I think Oswego's in that same spot, right? Oswego came in from last year and we knew they were really, really good. And they haven't really done a ton to prove that this year, but we're not knocking them because they haven't done anything to go the other way yet. And so like Oswego is a top 10 team we're talking about that with. I think Farmingdale's more like 40 to 50, right? That we're talking the same thing. But I feel like the benefit of the doubt's there when you've proven yourself last year and bring most everybody back.
And they were really good. Like that Christopher Newport game, I remember sitting at the scores table at Mary Hardin Baylor watching that game. They should have won the game. they should have beaten Christopher Newport, and they were really good. And I do think they are really good. I probably need to watch them again.
Different thing.
Yeah, I probably need to watch them again just because, they're one of those teams where it's like there's 80 other teams I'm trying to figure out. I think it's fair. They were a good team last year, and they're winning games.
February 3rd is a Saturday night. They happen to be playing at the Max Stern. If you want to fly out here, I'll drive up and we can watch the game together.
It's funny. I had that circled. I've behind the scenes, I've been working on trying to do that for like 2 months, and I don't know if it's possible, but I'll let you know real soon if I could take you up on that. Then we could just figure this out.
Let me know.
You guys
I'll
have an
try to make it
addiction
happen.
that needs some evaluation, just for the record.
We go to Burgers and Grill.
See, again, I think you've got an addiction. Could have come to Vegas, Bob. Could have seen some good teams.
It's like Cheers, man. Everyone knows your name there at Burgers and Grill, Dave. Place is awesome.
That's called Stalker. It's called Stalker.
I can't pronounce most of the foods.
Right there with you.
Say most of the foods, but I think they're delicious.
Hey, good choices across the board. Real quick, wanted to throw a couple of names at you just on what your reaction was. Because as I was doing my top 25, I had a couple of reactions to a couple of teams. I'm going to start with NYU. And I kid you not, my reaction was, crap, I fell for it. Here we go again. What's your thoughts on NYU having a rougher start to conference play than at least I was anticipating?
I still really like NYU. To me, I try really hard to remember that road conference games are nasty, and especially against good teams. So the losses you're referring to, Dave, are at Case Western Reserve, granted by like 18 points, and then to Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon just beat Case. So like, to me, that's like just chalk it up to like conference road games are nasty in a great league. I think Spencer Friedman is one of the best players in the country. I think they have enough around him now, size-wise, to help. I'm still big on NYU. I dropped them. I'm like 18 or 19, so I dropped them quite a bit. But I believe in them.
I watched a good portion of both of those games this weekend, and I actually felt like overall they were playing, especially the big guys, better than they were early in the season. I think one of the things is that they're relying on some of these transfer guys coming in who do not yet know what road games in the UAA are like. And they got a really good education this weekend. But like, you saw the D1 transfers playing like D1 transfers this weekend, even though they didn't win. And I think Friedman has kind of not been quite on his game the last couple of games. But I think once they put everything together, they keep the big guys playing like they are. They understand what a road trip means, and they get the guards kind of back on track because they just haven't been the last few games. I think they're still going to be really strong.
And they have four home games in a row right now. So this is the stretch that we're going to settle this once and for all. They have WashU, Chicago, Rochester, Emory. Those are all good teams to me. If they're the team we think they are, I know this sounds crazy, but you ought to win your 4 home games there.
I was going to say, do they need to go 4-0?
I mean, yeah. I think so. I think if they want to win the conference, they do. They already have those 2 losses, right? So to me, you got to win your home games, and that's a good test right there. And let's just let them play out that home stretch and see how it goes. I'll bet they do pretty well.
No, good reactions. I appreciate that. The other one I had was Mount Union. Got absolutely thumped by John Carroll in a game that wasn't as close as a score resulted in. Interesting enough, I did not move them down that far. Now, the premise I had was, hey, sometimes teams are just hotter than hot, and B, it's a conference loss. I'm not going to punish them. But, man, I regretted that afterward. I thought about 6 ways I could have done it differently. Just your reaction to the loss to John Carroll. Is that a red flag, Ryan?
I mean, I think it's an indication that there's not 2 even teams at the top of the OAC, which is maybe what we thought. I think the other part is the familiarity. So I was way down on Mount Union at the beginning of the season, and they've been really good the last couple of weeks outside of that John Carroll game. And it's because Christian Parker has shown up. He was not playing like an All-American beginning. He's averaging like 30 points a game over the last 4 or 5, except for the John Carroll game where he might have had 2 buckets, right? But how much do you chalk that up to John Carroll being, 1, really good, and 2, super familiar with this guy they know they have to shut down, right? Now, maybe that brings other questions up. Is Mount Union relying way too much on one guy who can get shut down by a good team? Maybe. But I think that they're very easily, in the 15 to 20 range, simply because the teams at that level are not going to be able to shut Christian Parker down.
And I'm in a weird place with Mount Union. We have a love-hate relationship in the ballot this year. Earlier I took Mount Union out. I took a little time out, a little conscious uncoupling, me and Mount Union. We took a break. And then I got him back in last week. It's like, okay, everything's good. And then I'm watching this John Carroll game. I'm like, what is going on here? Remember, John Carroll got pasted at home by Hampton-Sydney, who is the number 1 team. But John Carroll wasn't competitive at home against Hampton-Sydney. And Mount Union lost by like 92 points. And so then I had Mount Union out of my ballot a minute before hitting submit. You know what I did? I needed a voice of reason. I sent a little message to Matt Snyder. Matt, am I crazy for taking Mount Union out? And he very calmly said, I think they're a solid they're a solid addition in your ballot. And so I put Mount Union in at number 22. One of those, like, I'm just waiting for them to lose so I could go back to freaking Matt Snyder and be like, I told you, dude. But they're in, Dave, and I'm very conflicted by it. Don't know what to think of Mount Union.
Same guy who keeps voting against his own team?
That's Zach Snyder, the other guy. He's picking Hope and the Pick'ems, and that's Zach. The 2 brothers are very different brothers.
Yes,
we could do a show on that. But we could do a show on that, yeah. So anyway,
I would say this is an opposite case of like what we saw with Tufts and probably Emory to some degree. That the break was not good for those teams, and it's been great for Mount Union. And I feel much more that John Carroll is just maybe even a step above everybody in that conference, more than it is that Mount Union was deficient in something.
But if they are, Ryan, like, I agree with you. I think John Carroll is like the best team. But like, why did John Carroll get smashed by Hampton-Sydney? Well, we all know that Hampton-Sydney's great, but should Hampton-Sydney be boat racing you in your own gym? You know what I mean? Like, they're not that good. Like, was it just a clunker? You start to tie these things together and you just can't make sense of any of this stuff.
I mean, I can walk you through all of it. I think Hampton-Sydney is just way more physical, and they're big. I don't think Mount Union is nearly as physical, and they're really well known. Like,
yeah, sure.
How do you game plan for Hampton-Sydney? Like, which guy do you stop?
Agree.
There's not a guy, right? And then they had Davidson Hubbard, who showed up as an All-American, who's huge and really good down low, and that's John Carroll's weakness, right?
Agree with
Parker
that.
is a big guy, but he doesn't want to play down low, so that's an easy thing there. And I mean, Mount Union has some holes and they got some work to do, but I don't think it's a disaster.
Agree that like John Carroll would prefer. John Carroll is tall. They're not big, right? They're so tall and skilled. It's crazy. So great point that a physical team like Hampton-Sydney, you just talked me through that one. I've got that game covered. I'm good. I still have issues with Mount Union, but I have them in my ballot.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, gents. As always, really good stuff. And that was a little more lively than we usually get. I think because the top 25 is a little more lively than we usually get. So that was fun. I appreciate it. As always, I'm going to give the final word to you guys. Bob, we'll start with you.
Wednesday at the Shirk Center, number 8 Illinois Wesleyan women take on the hated Big Blue of Milliken and Coach Olivia Lett. So go Titans. In all seriousness, shouts to the Titan women. They have been fantastic. They are fun to watch, and I'm really impressed by the way they've played. So that I'm using my final thoughts to give a shout out to my own people.
All good, sir. Ryan?
I had 2 things. One, I just want to explain the Trinity vote. I did the ballot. I did my rankings. I actually had them sitting at 3rd, but I did vote for them first last week. And I think a team that I think is a top 5 caliber team who has not lost gets the benefit of the doubt. Put them up there. They've been absolutely dominating. Their defense is unreal. That's why they're there. Maybe they'll prove me wrong and lose. I'm not going to feel bad about that. The other one, though, is on the lookout this week. Mary Washington and Christopher Newport play this week. And as I was doing my ballot, those were 2 teams that I said, the resume, they've got losses you don't like, but they've got wins you really do like. Their play has been all over the map. And then looking at in terms of selection criteria, they both need to win this game this week.
Yeah.
This is a huge game for both of them, which I think coming into the year, we thought those were both tournament teams, no problem. And it's looking more and more like it's going to be tough for them both to get in. And so that's coming up, I think, either Wednesday or Thursday. I forgot to check which day it is this week, but huge ramifications in this game, which is also a rivalry game, which is also between two really, really good teams. If you're watching one this week, that's my game of the week.
And we should point out Mary Washington without their leading scorer in Rowland since early December.
So they played their best game in the last game when he wasn't in there. So this may have been an addition by subtraction here.
You're right. And Christopher Newport, we'll update this in a minute. Trey Barber is back to some degree for them off of his indefinite suspension. So, gentlemen, great stuff. Thank you so much. More of your time than you probably budgeted, but I appreciate it nonetheless. You do your best, Rainiac, there. He was listening in, by the way, and chiming in on the YouTube side of things. So I think he appreciated that.
Where he just sits here like he doesn't. He just kind of sits here. Now I can't even do it.
I can't do it either.
To be that guy
from the Midwest. You can't do that look. That's not a Midwest thing.
No, it's not a comfortable look.
I could talk about bacon night, but that'd be a whole other thing.
Guys, take care. Bob, good luck digging yourself out of all that 2 inches of snow, sir.
Yeah, it's like one. I'll be okay. We're going to live down here in Dallas.
Exactly. Take care,
Thanks, guys. Great stuff. Thanks,
See
Ryan.
ya.
Thanks, guys.
Bob Quillman and Ryan Scott joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline in the top 25. Appreciate them doing that. Give them a little applause there as we were. Quick note, again, as we said, Trey Barber is back for Christopher Newport. He came back for the Marymount game and then the Rosemont game. He came off the bench, 24 minutes, 14 points against Marymount. Off the bench, 22 minutes, 9 points in the Rosemont game. I think he's posted one video since the one I saw when he had, announced basically he was on indefinite suspension. So he's done 2 since he was suspended. Not sure if maybe that was part of it or not. We'll see if he continues, and we'll see if he continues staying on the team, if he works his way back into the starting lineup, et cetera. So Christopher Newport, Trey Barber, that was news I meant to mention last show, but forgot to mention. So there you go. I want to thank all our guests for coming on. Great show. Absolutely awesome. Talked to Notre Dame. I want to thank Coach Wynn there, Bowdoin, Coach Phelps, Cal Lou, Coach White, and Maryville, Coach Placeris. I want to thank the sports information departments for their assistance as well. Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern, we'll be back on the air. 4 more schools will feature, and we'll probably get the women's pundits back in one more time. Then we'll see if we'll take a break or not. We'll see where the top 25s take us. But that's all coming up Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Really appreciate it. I want to thank Ryan and Bob once again for coming on the show as well. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the Hoopsville Studios. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on Thursday.